a new generation hoping to get to know Syria for the first time.
I don't remember anything of my country, so being able to see my country for like practically the first time would be like absolutely amazing. I'll get to see all my relatives back home. I'll be like really happy, really excited.
It's impossible not to feel joyous in this occasion, for sure. I'm just still very worried about what is to come. But yeah, I totally get why people will be fucking excited at the prospect of being able to return to their homes, return to their countries. Let's start with Syria. Syrian rebel forces have seized Damascus as the Assad regime topples. Now, this is a really interesting and, dare I say, complex situation. The morality of Assad is not complex. Assad is a brutal tyrant and also, you know, a dog shit statesman in general. Can't speak for his, acumen in eye surgery. But as far as the rulership over Syria goes, not a good guy. Okay? This is something that I've talked about, especially as of late, quite a bit. Having said that, however, I analyze it in a way that is not dissimilar in many respects to Saddam Hussein, because there are plenty of people. Syria is a very diverse country. There are plenty of people who have been destroyed by the brutality of the Assad regime. This much is true. But the destabilization of Syria still, at the end of the day, benefits the United States of America. Okay? And we will talk in depth about all the parties involved today. I have already covered it. I have given you a little briefer, but it's a situation where it's literally like neither side is good, with the exception, I guess, of the Kurdish groups in the region. But even the Kurdish groups that are good in the region are still directly funded and trained by America. So even good groups can still be used as a weapon by the American State Department. But let's get started.
In his dynastic heartland and putative holdout on the Mediterranean coast, where they ride a statue of his father through the streets. In Hama, seized in the Assad era, or Thursday, where a reporter sheds his protective vest to embody the emergence of a new Syria. But perhaps the most instructive place to look is here, in the former regime's darkest corner. The corridors of Saidnaya prison, north of Damascus, where they killed so many thousands, they built a crematorium outside. A young child comes into view. Look at that boy, poor thing, they say. These women at the heart of a brutal...
Anyone who thinks Syria is free now is delusional. Israel's already invaded and bombed parts of southern Syria, the Greater Israel Project. Don't worry, we'll talk about it. I'm going to get
industrial oppression, being freed, being told to say God is great, not to worry about possessions, about ID cards, about where to go and how. Another prison, the same story. He says, there's no state anymore, sister. Damn the state, it's fallen. Come down, come on. Russia's foreign ministry left to confirm that Assad was now out of the country, having left instructions to transfer power peacefully. Assad's prime minister saying he will stay in Syria to hand over government functions to a transitional administration. But for now, real power rests with this man, Abu Muhammad al-Jalani, leader of the Islamist HTS forces, listed as terrorists by many countries, but spearheaded the regime's collapse. For days...
he got a copy of... Listen, he got a copy of Why Nations Fail from Acemoglu, the Turkish MIT guy, and he got woke. He read one copy of Why Nations Fail, and he was like, we got to protect these institutions. Oh.
He's been talking in terms of moderation, of safeguards for minorities. Inside Damascus's Umayyad Mosque, a message of victory for Sunni Islam.
This is a new victory, my brothers, for the entire Islamic nation. Victory, my brothers, marks a new chapter in the region's history. We have avoided the dangers of leaving Syria.
Overall, is this a positive or negative? I'm gonna keep it a $1.50 with you, okay? It is a very weird situation, and I don't think it will overall be positive. We'll see. But because Assad is so fucking bad, like, there are a shit ton of people, especially of Sunni background, that are going to be celebrating this, understandably. Okay? There are no... I'll go so far as to say there are no clear winners in this, especially for the Syrian population, other than Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Okay? And it's really interesting to think about, because a lot of people falsely have said, I am a neo-Ottomanist, Turkish feudal warlord that wants to restore the glory of the Ottoman Caliphate. And if that was the case, then this would be the #1 moment where I'm literally aligned with American State Department interests, and I could just freely talk about how incredible Erdogan is as a statesman. Okay? Because guess what? He did the damn thing. He did. In terms of realpolitik, Recep Tayyip Erdogan came out as the #1 winner of this equation, more so than even Israel. Do you understand? Like, he's had a growing, genuinely growing and very volatile anti-Syrian, anti-refugee movement in his country. He basically gets to send a lot of, well, not even send the Syrians back. They voluntarily will go back to their homes. There are millions of Syrians living inside of Turkey, which has created a lot of anger and animosity against the Syrians in the country. He now also gets to have a major say in what happens in this, border nation. There has always been a lot of back and forth between Erdogan and Assad. If Syrians have voluntarily returned to their homes, that was a bad thing. Oh, no, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think it's, look, no one should be forced out of their homes by a brutal regime, okay? That's why I'm saying that just like every other real movement during the Arab Spring, the Syrian revolutionary forces did not start at a incorrect starting point. There was a very valid reason for people to rise up against the Assad regime. But, as is the case globally, very quickly, I think other regional operatives, whether it be Russia that came to defend Syria, whether it be Iran that came to defend the Syrian regime, or whether it be America and America's obviously #1 ally in the region, Turkey, and also Israel, that took advantage of the instability and used it to shove their own actors into the equation to suit their own interests. It will, however, never not be funny to me, someone growing up in the United States of America now for the past 10 years, to see a former Al-Qaeda leader get this much positive coverage. In my opinion, this is so close to the Afghan civil war, like in the ways that the American State Department operated there, and the valid reasons as to why many Muslims in Afghanistan were understandably against the USSR aligned Afghan government at the time. It is damn near identical. And I think we know what happened in the aftermath of arming and offering logistical support to the brave Mujahideen. It is wild to me that we are once again doing the exact same thing. Now, I have no good solutions to this. I don't. I do not know what the best pathway forward for Syria is. But the only thing I will say is that it is understandable that the Syrians that were victim to the brutalities of the Assad regime are celebrating. Having said that, those who have quote unquote liberated Syria from the throes of Assad's brutal regime are unfortunately not great either. Türkiye is the difference here. Her şey Amerikan gücü dahilinde değil. Kardeşim, NATO ülkesi, yapma etme. Saçmalamayın arkadaşlar. Nükleer füzesi var Amerika'nın. Yapmayın etmeyin ya. İncirlik'te Amerikan nükleer füzeleri var. Saçmalıyorsunuz eğer Amerika'nın Amerika git orada ne yapacaksan yap demeden Türkiye hiçbir bok yapamaz. Yapmayın etmeyin. Allah Allah. Saçmalık yani. Dönüp de diyorsunuz ki bir yandan da Kürtlere veriyorlar ama silah. Tamam. Ondan sonra Türkiye geri gidiyor. Vuruyor Kürtleri. Amerika hiç bakmıyor bile. Neden bakmıyor? Çünkü sikinde değil. Çünkü Türkiye NATO. Türkiye NATO'nun ikinci en büyük ordusu. Saçmalamayın. Yani Erdoğan her gün çıkar der ki İsrail'in amına koyayım, İsrail'in amına koyayım, İsrail orospu çocukları desin. Ne yapıyor ondan sonra? Bakü'den göndermiyorlar mı yine petrolü? Türkiye üzerinden göndermiyorlar mı petrolü İsrail'e? Gönderiyorlar. Neden? Yıllar boyunca Erdoğan Mavi Marmara'dan sonra anasını sikeyim İsrail'in falan dedi. Ne yaptılar? Bunu dediler, ondan sonra ne yaptı? İsrail'in pilotları yine gelip NATO üslerinde çalışmadılar mı? Çalıştılar. Eğitimlerini orada aldılar. Anyway. Are you also very concerned about Turkey taking its influence over the victorious rebel factions and turning them against the Kurds? I think either it's going to be a Balkanization that is still pieced up by the Western forces. Israel will also have a say. I don't suspect Turkey like just straightforwardly pummeling the Kurdish groups in the region. And if they do, that will still be at the behest of America. We shall see.
Syria as a playground for Iranian ambitions, spreading sectarianism and corruption.
The Assad family's home, the vast presidential palace, now a site for a sort of revolutionary tourism, an opportunity to reclaim some of the regime's ill-gotten gains.
Victory to Syria. Syria remains and Assad is in hell, in the dustbin of history.
But for millions of Syria's displaced, it's their own homes they're desperate to reclaim. So often these roads have been clogged with those fleeing to safety. Now the polarity has been reversed. Hope embodied in a traffic jam. But still plenty of space for fear of what's to follow. Already there's been fighting between rival rebel groups in the north, the Turkish-backed Syrian National Army taking the town of Manbij from the US-backed.
Remember when they were saying to me in the chat, like, oh, the Turkish-backed Syrian National Army, like, they're not, you're wrong. Turkey is not a player in this. Like, come on, dog. It's about to get, in my opinion, it's about to get more fucked somehow. I'm a Syrian Christian, just hoping whatever it is next for the country, my people won't be persecuted, to be honest. Yeah. See, that's the other side of this. The other side of this is also that, first of all, let me just say one thing. I think that Russia is so busy in Ukraine that they could not offer any sort of material support to Syria. But I don't even know if they wanted to. I think that I suspect that Putin wanted Erdogan to make inroads with the Assad regime, and Assad refused. Partially because they don't suspect Erdogan to be anything but a person who is operating at the behest of Western interests. But virtually every other group in the region that could offer some kind of support, virtually every other group in the region that could offer any support, like Hezbollah, for example, has been destabilized and is now more focused on rebuilding Lebanon after Israel pummeled southern Lebanon. And all of the axis of resistance against Israel in the region is licking their wounds and trying to reconstruct. And Iran is spread too thin. This created an opportunity for all of the cells that are anti-Assad, that range from secular forces, ethnic Kurdish militias, Marxist-Leninist forces, all the way to the Salafists, former Al-Qaeda and former ISIS operatives, and Turkish-backed Salafists to take advantage of this opportunity and seemingly fucking take over Syria in a matter of a week. That is precisely what happened here. And I am fearful of what will happen to the many different ethnic minorities, ranging from Kurdish people to the Shia population to the Christians, especially under the Assyrians, especially under the rulership of, I mean, straight up Al-Qaeda. Like, these guys are former Al-Qaeda leaders. And if you listen to what they have to say, even the Salafists that are under the training of the Turkish government, like, make no mistake, like, some of the stuff that they're talking about is still very much global jihad. So it's a terrifying prospect. So I don't know what will happen. I hope that, stop being overdramatic. Chatter. It's impossible not to see random people being released from prison and the celebration that creates, that you know, the celebration that invokes. Okay, it's a good thing objectively. I am not of the mindset that, like, every single person that was imprisoned by the Assad government was a fucking ISIS terrorist or whatever. Okay, that's ridiculous. There are so many people who were falsely imprisoned. Having said that, however, the very fact that the major forces here, like major players in the coalition, being former Al-Qaeda leadership, I think it's understandable for me to demonstrate some level of concern, especially for all of the non-Sunni Syrian populations and even the Sunni Syrian populations, as a matter of fact. There is a reason why Hamas originally was in favor of toppling the Assad government, despite the fact that they literally operated in the way that they operate out of Doha right now. They used to operate out of Damascus. Okay? Because there was a valid reason for the uprising against Assad. But if you are to expect me to sit here and be like, this is going to be fantastic for Syrians because the major coalition head, who was a former Al-Qaeda guy, is now saying, oh, that was just a phase. When we were like decapitating Christians, when we were beheading Christians, that was just a phase for me. I'm good with that. When I say global jihad and, you know, rising up in arms against the Christian heretics, like that was just a phase. I'm good now. It's hard for me to believe that. And this is before we even get to Israel in the equation as well. While the Assad regime is not exactly pro-Palestine and hasn't been for quite a while, okay? Syria provided a logistical hub for the axis of resistance in the region, and it was a shaky allegiance that they had, specifically with the Iranian government. But it was still a logistical hub nonetheless. A logistical hub for Hezbollah and a logistical hub for, Iran in general. The Kurdish movement said they're ready to open discussions with all the forces. You are a little bit underestimating the capacity of Syrian people to organize. HTS are less radical than before, even from 2018, and not only after U.S. backup. They did that to get international sympathy for only after Assad order, and they got that. Did you see the Saydana prison? Yeah, I'm gonna cover the Saydana prison as well. That part is really fucking insane. Saydana prison apparently has, it's like a fresh hell. They have, that's the one with the multiple floors that are impossible to reach at this point, right? Look, I question anyone that says like HTS is reformed. I don't think it's, only time will tell. I am very skeptical. We shall see. Having said that, however, said Naya. Having said that, however, yeah, there are literally multiple basement floors of the prison, inside of the prison complex, that are impossible to open up unless you have someone from the Assad regime. Syria, mind-blowing figure circulating about the Saydnaya prison in Damascus. The complex was believed to have up to 20,000 detainees, but the red building itself, photo, is said to have more than double. Some levels still haven't been reached. There are several floors under the Saydnaya prison which couldn't be reached so far due to the special unique security mechanisms. This is the red building. It's the section dedicated to civilians arrested by Assad's regime since 2011. There are motherfuckers who left the prison who thought that the former Assad was still in charge. Like, they just don't know what the fuck is going on. After over 10 hours of work, the doors of the red prison of Saydnaya are finally broken. New waves of detainees are being liberated. The man filming, looking for his family while documenting this. How could we believe this is happening? Yeah, there were prisoners who have been in there for so long they thought they were being liberated by Saddam's army. Like, it's insane. I think it's important to note that the Turkish HTS is different from the Syrian Free Army, which captured Damascus. The latter is directly funded by America, whereas the former is indirectly through Turkey. Bottom line is they are distinct groups, and history suggests infighting may occur when there's a vacuum, so I don't think this spells the end of the civil war. Yeah, I don't think so either. It's like, rarely ever do you have like so much sectarian infighting amongst groups that are also directly being funded on by, either directly or indirectly through a regional ally like Turkey, still funded by, you know, the American State Department. Bazı tutukların akıllı telefonun ne olduğunu bilmeye belirtiliyor. They're saying that detainees don't even know what a smartphone is. Look, chaotic images from the infamous Sednaya prison with people advancing layer by layer to free the prisoners. Like, it's crazy. Eight years ago, Amnesty reported that prisoners were being left without food for days, sometimes even weeks. People are tortured and beaten for hours without breaks, sometimes every single day. Many die and are left to rot in crowded cells, while others are alive with diseases spreading. I think there's like a child that was born in the prison or some shit too. It was like fucking insane. I mean, I don't know. This is like, some of it is fog of war stuff. But I mean, it is a fresh hell for sure. And it's impossible not to, you know, look at these images and think, you know, this is a bad thing. It is a good thing. Out, you're free, out. Bashar al-Assad has fallen. I need my ID. You don't need ID. The checkpoints are gone. I'm from Homs. He's liberated too. Then on men's level, what about the women? The women are out. Don't worry. The son of a bitch is gone. Yeah, I mean, not to fucking, not to lighten the mood at all, and make this silly, but yeah, it is like impelled down. I mean, it's a fresh hell, literally. We'll look at what Sina Tusi had to say about this. But yeah, I am not an Assadist, and you know, all memes aside about talking about the fucking line of Damascus or whatever. It's silly shit that people. I think being an Assadist is like being someone who's pro-Putin, where it's just campish shit overall. Having said that, however, I am still very skeptical over what will happen in Syria, because it's not like I'm pro-America or pro-Turkey either in the region. And I fear that the Syrian people will still continue to suffer, and there will most likely still be a lot of ethnic strife and a lot of infighting.
And Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces. And while Kurds further east celebrate stunning gains over Assad and Iranian-backed forces, fears here about the potential for ISIS to gain ground.
We will also continue to maintain our presence in eastern Syria, which is solely to ensure the enduring defeat of ISIS and has nothing to do with other aspects of this conflict.
And rebel forces have entered Tartus, home to one of Russia's 2 Syrian naval bases. What now for Moscow's foothold on the Mediterranean? What now for the many regime loyalists here fearing reprisals? From the occupied Golan Heights, Israel's Prime Minister claiming credit for events in Syria. The result, he says, of blows dealt to Hezbollah and Iran. Israel sending forces.
Reddit has gone full pro HTS because of Putin is wild to see, man. Yeah, it's especially wild to see because, like, the guys that, like, HTS represents exactly the type of dudes that the average American thinks is like, you know, the jihadists, like all Muslims are like that. HTS is, you know, originally a global jihad organization, or at least, like, you know, the guy is fucking Al Qaeda. I don't know what else to say. Like, it's just, It's so crazy when they when they point to Hamas, like Reddit points to Hamas and says like, these are Salafist jihadists, like these are scary guys. And then when there are people who literally have done the, beheadings of Christian people and shit like that, all of a sudden they're like, no, we're with those guys because everybody told us that those guys are good. It's kind of wild how big of a demonstration of the power of manufactured consent is in this story. He was in every Islamist group on earth. What Al-Jilani has to do for you to be more charitable to him, brother, I'm sorry. There is I don't think there's anything he can do. Just step aside. Like they fucking wokeified Al-Qaeda, dude, in real time. It's like, this is it for me. Especially as listen, for me, there's a couple things where it's like, if you got this in your resume, it's virtually impossible for me to ever think that you are going to be a good guy. Okay? Like, if you're the emir of the Al-Nusra Front, okay? Like, if you have... like, if you got this in your resume, former Al-Qaeda, Al-Qaeda in Iraq, Mujahideen Shura Council, Islamic State of Iraq, the Al-Nusra Front. Like, what a goddamn resume. I mean, this guy is on the terror watch list for America since, like, in perpetuity. All he had to do was take the fucking headdress off, take a shower, trim the beard a little bit, and put the goddamn fatigues on for everybody to be like, nah, he's woke now. Like, yeah, this guy was in the terrorist groups like he was collecting infinity stones. It's crazy. It's so funny. Chatters in here being like, yo, give him a chance. One must ask the question why I have this attitude towards a very different attitude that I demonstrate towards Hamas as I do towards this guy. And no, it's not because I'm like, fuck America unconditionally. I understand how violent and ruthless the Assad regime was. Okay, I get it. I get why people would be like, yeah, this guy is our salvation. Okay? Especially if you're Sunni, like if you're being oppressed. It's just, it's hard, man. It's hard for me to trust the dude who has spent most of his fucking career in ISIS adjacent groups. Yeah, they put him through the Zelensky beam. All of a sudden, he's wearing fatigues. He's like clean cut, talking about how he's reading Why Nations Fail and shit. And I'm supposed to be like, yeah, no, this guy is good now. I mean, that's crazy. And I know Charles Lister likes or is like talked about them a lot. And I like Charles Lister's commentary on other stuff. But on this issue, I feel like I'm a little bit more skeptical than he is. You know what I mean? Yeah, they Zelenskyfied him. Like, yeah, he's reading Settlers of Catan. Or not Settlers of Catan. Yeah. All right, let's continue with this video.
Into the UN buffer zone. Syrians know all too well the perils of this moment, but across the country, they're choosing to focus on its
reading the board game Settlers of Catan by Jay Sakai.
Potential. Nowhere more so than here in Damascus.
Funny how you trust Wikipedia. Oh my lord. No, it is way too complex for you to... Wait, what? I'm sorry that I'm covering the fucking... Yeah, it is over your head. Okay, come in and say hi. There's some historical irony in the IDF entrance into Quneitra. The old city of Quneitra is a thriving cosmopolitan city. Capital of Golan was occupied in 1967 and immediately cleansed. Jumped to 1974's disengagement between Golda and Hafez. And Quneitra was set to return to Syria. What does Israel do? Destroy the city. Blow everything up. Gone. Arab papers called it the Hiroshima of the Middle East. Old Quneitra remains empty to this day. Here we are 50 years later.
I can't believe you would, as a Syrian.
Oh, yeah, guys. Austin has revealed himself as a Syrian.
No, basically, my family comes from the part of Lebanon that was Syria.
This motherfucker just wants to be
I'm just
everything.
fucking with you. I'm Lebanese, but they come from the part of Lebanon that was Syria, but it became Lebanon. Anyway, I'm just saying hi and bye. I'm going to leave because I thought we were going to do a Sunday fun day, but evidently not.
I mean, we could do the...
I mean, I won't even be.
How long are you here?
Like, I'm not going to be here for that long. It's all good. No, hey, you know what? It's fine. I'll be back next weekend.
You son of a bitch. I mean,
look, no, I don't want to disrupt your flow. This is obviously something that everybody wants to.
Well, I was going to say is like, if you want to wait a little bit, we can get back to fit review.
Wait, you were doing fit reviews?
I didn't do it. I'm saying I will though.
No, I have to go like in 30 minutes anyway, so I'm just going to go now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I just popped in. Hey, you know what? It's okay. Sometimes it doesn't work out, and that's okay. I'm going with the flow. I'm off my Prilosec.
You're such a ridiculous person.
We'll see you next weekend.
All right.
All right.
Peace.
Peace.
Okay. Always a tease, yeah. I'm not going to kiss him goodbye.
Damascus, and a young couple experiencing the revolutionary version of a shotgun wedding.
It's the most beautiful moment of our lives, and because we won't experience this joy twice, I decided my wedding would be today, on 8/12/2024, a date we'll remember. It's an unforgettable day we'll teach our...
Okay, this is like totally random and not the main point, but I do hate that people still fucking shoot guns into the air to celebrate. Is so bad. It's such a bad practice that needs to be abolished in its entirety because it's so fucking dangerous. Every time I see that shit, I'm like, dude, those bullets land, dog, and it literally kills people. It's so fucking dangerous. Not the point here at all, but I hate seeing it. I'm like, oh, it's so it's so unimaginably fucking dangerous, dog. It is so dangerous. No, they're not firing blanks, brother. They're firing real bullets. You're being the too woke friend right now. Listen, if that's the one time where I'm the friend who's too woke, then so be it. Okay? Straight up, I think it's one of the worst practices. One of the worst fucking practices. It is so goddamn dangerous, and people get killed all the time, or at least injured all the fucking time. Okay? Sorry, call me fucking woke. It's just, it literally is a thing I cannot stand.
Children about.
Just what will this day come to signify? A question perhaps for Syria's as yet unborn generation.
Harry Fawcett reporting. Well, ruling Syria was a family business for the Assads that began in 1971. Here, Edward Heath was prime minister at the time. First Hafez, the father, and then Bashar, the son, who became the heir apparent after his...
Yeah, this is funny. Dude, every day there's a new Jelani statement. It's so funny. It's fucking awesome. He said, new Ahmad al-Shara Jawlani statement. To all the military forces in the city of Damascus, it is strictly forbidden to approach public institutions, which will remain under the supervision of the former prime minister until they are officially handed over. And it is also forbidden to fire bullets in the air. Interestingly, when it was first written, it said Al-Rais and not Al-Qaid, but then quickly edited. Very interesting. Yeah. Even woke-ass Jelani's like, bro, we can't do that. We can't be doing that. That shit is not good. He's woke. He's DEI. He's so DEI. They hit him They hit him with the Zelensky ray. Anyway.
His older brother died in a car accident in 1994. The Assad family survived the Cold War, multiple regional wars and a civil war, but in the end they couldn't survive the distraction of Russia in Ukraine and Iran and Hezbollah facing off against Israel.
The President of Syria and Mrs. al-Assad, Your Majesty.
Once upon a time in 2002, Assad, the former eye doctor, and his wife, the doctor's daughter from Acton. The young
Al-Rais means the president and Al-Qaid means the commander.
President of Syria was someone that many thought they could do business with.
Syria is going to be an important part of building a peaceful and stable future in the Middle East.
I was there.
The First Lady of Syria was so
Yeah, Asma is a baddie, straight up. Like,
unlike any other in the region that Vogue called her the Rose of the
no wonder Assad was a wife guy. Like,
desert and put her on the cover. The Assad family became pin-ups of bliss and normality. But family history told a different story. Bashir's father, Hafez, who came from the small Alawite minority, had ruled Syria with an iron fist for over a quarter of a century. He was respected in Moscow and Washington and feared at home. And a decade after the son took power, the Arab Spring came to Syria and the other side of Assad's character came to the fore.
there's a TOS here.
In Deraa in the southwest, the regime shot dozens as ordinary citizens echoed the cries of freedom from Tunisia, Egypt and Libya. The former eye surgeon became blind to the suffering of his own people, inflicted by him and his henchmen. In his prisons, torture, including of children, became the norm, and hundreds of thousands of civilians disappeared. The catalogue of brutality mounted, as did the bodies, almost 500,000. Barrel bombs dropped by planes onto residential neighborhoods and hospitals. And in 2018, a chemical attack in Douma that may have killed over 1,000. It was condemned by President Obama, who ended up ignoring his own red lines and stayed on the sidelines. What kept Assad in power?
Hillary Clinton probably has the same kill count of Jelani, and you still give her a chance and even a vote. Al-Qaeda can also become tepid neoliberals too, can't they? I feel like Hillary Clinton's kill count might be higher overall. I mean, but it's a wild thing to present Hillary Clinton as the, you know, it's a wild thing to present Hillary Clinton here, considering who's backing Jelani. Bashar laughing at Gaddafi, suggesting he might get toppled in 2008. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he was.
شو سبب تدمير العراق وغزو العراق وقتل مليون عراقي؟ وخلص بقى الامريكان يجاوبونا.
I still think you should give Jelani a chance. I'm not gonna lie. I think the nuance here is that he's purged Al-Qaeda members within his own org for quite some time now. He may really be pulling more moderates. Just my 2 cents on what I get from Syrians in my community. Yeah, good luck to everybody involved, okay? I saw this as well. This account is like not great, but this is from the interview that he conducted. Where she asked him, Jelani, like the killings in Iraq at the base of Al-Qaeda, like, what do you have to say to that? And his response is like, you know, bygones be bygones type shit, that we were young, something along those lines. Is there an interview? Is there an interview with subtitles? I want to watch this interview. It's in the playlist?
It was military help from some powerful friends. First, neighboring Iran. the Shia power helping Assad's Alawite Shiite minority. Here, Iran's pin-up commander Qasem Soleimani addressed the troops fighting the Syrian rebels before he was killed by an airstrike ordered by President Trump. And then there was Moscow, whose planes and helicopter gunships ruled from the Syrian air. Putin and Assad had both taken power in 2000. They believed themselves indispensable to the rule that keeps or kept their country together, and increasingly their end justified some brutal means. Syria's civil war exported its consequences. 7 million ended up on the refugee trail in Turkey and Lebanon, and in 2015 on the long trek to Europe. Many of them heading to Germany, huddled masses triggering unintended consequences inside the EU. The rise of the anti-immigrant far right, breathing life into Germany's AfD. New life into France's Marine Le Pen. More life and power into Hungary's Viktor Orban. And even providing Farage's Brexit campaign with perhaps its most powerful, if misleading, poster. President Assad was kept in power by Iran and Russia, and with one distracted by a standoff with Israel and the other by war in Ukraine, they threw him under the bus this week, leaving his country up for grabs. Whoever ends up ruling Syria, and however, the next few months are bound to show once again that what happens in Syria doesn't stay in Syria. Well, with Assad gone and the country in the hands of different groups...
Putin sold him out. I mean, I think Putin's relationship with Assad was always a strategic one. It wasn't like they were super on board with one another regardless. Plus, he has his hands full with the whole invading and bombing the shit out of Ukraine situation. Oh, what is happening? Can you hear me? I got muted for a second. Assad is that's not even true. Assad is in Russia. No, I know, but historically speaking, I don't think that Putin was always on board. And not only that, but also, just because he's in Russia right now doesn't change that dynamic at all. Like, Russia utilizes Syria. It has regional interests. It also wants to. Russia is anti-America at every step, and it uses Syrian naval bases as well. I think Russia had too much focus and resources in Ukraine and would have spared stuff if he could have saved his air base and naval base in Tartus and Latakia. Yeah.
Groups of rebels. What now for the future of Syria? A little earlier, I spoke to the Syrian columnist and foreign policy expert, Dr. Hyde. He's a consulting fellow.
Shut the fuck up. This dude's name is not Hyde.
At the think tank Chatham House in London. And I began by asking him if he thought that Assad's downfall was made possible by his allies being distracted with other wars.
So if you look at Russia's position, has moved most of its equipment as well as personnel away from Syria because of the war in Ukraine. And it was difficult for them to then allocate the resources needed for Assad to be able to stop opposition fighters. And I think for the Russians, it was sort of their calculations that we have invested all this money and the regime has not been able to fight back, so why would we just go ahead and then repeat the same mistakes again? For Iran, it was a similar situation, especially since Hezbollah, its main arm, not only in the Middle East, but in Syria, which contributed to the protection of the regime for years, is now completely distracted in its own war with Israel.
And so what happens now? Because there are so many different rebel forces, from Kurdish separatists to, Islamists of different, levels of extremism that have converged on the big cities. Who's going to actually run the place now?
Syrians are celebrating today. I think many are trying to figure out what tomorrow holds. The problem right now is, as you mentioned, you have rebel groups, different ones, not only the ones who started the fight, but then you have local armed groups who then also started their own fights in order to liberate their areas from the regime. This is what complicates the situation. How will then the political opposition that is now entering negotiations with different groups will be able to then establish not only contact but influence over the groups that are controlling the territories on the ground, and who will be able to then determine who will have the biggest say in what the transitioning body would look like.
I mean, given the state of the Middle East at the moment, if Syria implodes or becomes chaotic, or there's another kind of civil war that results from this, what are the consequences going to be for the region?
Big consequences. You have the most obvious one will be the new flow of refugees to neighboring countries and potentially to Europe and elsewhere. Then you have the security element. Then you have clashes maybe not only being contained to Syria, but involving other countries, groups even operating from Syria against other countries or carrying out attacks. Then you have the ISIS sort of threat. The group has been gaining sort of more resources, as well as carrying out more attacks in Syria, and this would create a golden opportunity for the group to be able to just carry out attacks not only in Syria but elsewhere as well.
Of course, power is changing, including in Washington. Mr. Trump takes over at the end of January. I mean, does he have any impact on this new reality in the Middle East?
I think it does. The most obvious one is that most of the influential policymakers in the Biden administration, they have already moved on. They have secured other jobs or in the process of securing other jobs. So there is no one left to really look at what's happening in Syria and then try to play the leadership role that the US has usually played.
Finally, and very briefly, is Iran one of the principal backers of the Assad regime? Are they the biggest losers in this, and what consequences will that have for them?
I think it's safe to say that Iran will be the biggest loser. It seems that Iran will not be able to secure any of its interest in Syria. If you look at what they have been trying to use Syria for over the past years, is one, to continue to supply Hezbollah with weapons, and no matter who basically rules Damascus, it will be difficult for them to allow that, mainly due to the role that Hezbollah has played in killing Syrians across the country.
Is this from Financial Times? Oh, it is. Okay. Financial Times, consistently the best reporting. Straight up. I would say, especially since October 7th, Financial Times has become, I think, the best in terms of its coverage. Iran was done with Bashar al-Assad. It seems like there isn't any love lost. One Iranian insider accuses the Assad regime of leaking the positions of the Iranian military commanders. The insider said there had been long-standing frustration with Assad in Tehran for more. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, I don't think anybody likes Assad. Like, I don't even think Russia likes Assad, even though they're offering him shelter, because there's a use for Assad. They can use him as a bargaining chip. For more than a year, it was clear as time had passed, he'd become an obstacle, a liability. Some even called him a betrayer. His inaction cost us dearly, and he aligned himself with regional actors who promised him a future that never materialized. Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Egypt, Iraq, Iran, Turkey, and Russia issue a joint statement calling for an end to the military combat in Syria and a political solution. I think they're going for a managed transition. We are coordinating to find a political solution to the crisis in Syria. The meeting of ministers stressed the importance of strengthening joint international efforts to increase humanitarian aid to the Syrian people. At long last, the Assad regime has fallen. The fall of this regime is a fundamental act of justice. It is a moment of historic opportunity for the long-suffering people of Syria to build a better future for their country. It is also a moment of risk and uncertainty. Is Al-Qaeda good now? According to the West, excuse me, former Al-Qaeda, reformed. Reformed. He's reformed now. He got hit with a DEI ray. She leaked it. Now, who the fuck is ready to trade some friendship bracelets with me at the last Eras tour show? I don't know what you guys are talking about. What did she leak? DE-ISIS. Terrorist modification, the New York Times, citing officials' reports of the U.S. intelligence agencies, the Biden administration are assessing Hayat Tahrir al-Shams and his leadership and potentially taking them off the terror watch list. The one person that I feel bad for in this is Tulsi Gabbard. I wonder what she's going to do. Like, there's anti-interventionists in the American government that were very critical of the Obama administration's dealings with Syria. And then there were people that took it a step further, I would say. And it always felt like Tulsi Gabbard was one of the people that took it a step further. The spirit of Aloha has left Damascus. Yeah, it lives on in Moscow for the time being. Why did Tulsi like him? Yeah, I saw this tweet from Trump, which is definitely not from Trump. Opposition fighters in Syria, in an unprecedented move, have totally taken over numerous cities in a highly coordinated offensive and are now on the outskirts of Damascus, obviously preparing to make a very big move towards taking out Assad. Russia, because they are so tied up in Ukraine and with the loss there of over 600,000 soldiers, seems incapable of stopping this literal march through Syria, a country they have protected for years. This is where former President Obama refused to honor his commitment of protecting the red line in the sand, as all hell broke out with Russia stepping in. But now they are, like possibly Assad himself, being forced out. And it may actually be the best thing that can happen to them. There was never much of a benefit in Syria for Russia, other than that to make Obama look really stupid. In any event, Syria is a mess, but is not our friend. And the United States should have nothing to do with it. This is not our fight. Let it play out. Do not get involved. Dog, what are you saying? How? This is such a funny take from Trump. This is not our fight. It's like, okay, I don't know about that.
For decades.
Dr. Hyde, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thousands of Syrians displaced during the civil war after enduring often long and perilous journeys ended up settling right here in the UK. So today, many were out celebrating the fall of the regime that uprooted their lives in gatherings across the country. Some hope to return to Syria one day, but there's anxiety and hope that the news is not too good to be true. Francis Reid reports from one of the rallies in Trafalgar Square.
Celebration after so many sleepless nights, watching events unfold from 3,000 miles away. All those here in Trafalgar Square see the events of the last few days.
What is this? Why? You're going to say it's complicated? 36-month subscriber. Libers is complicated. Why? Can't answer. Wait, what? Jesus Christ. Just say who's siding with Israel. Who's supporting Israel and Israel's interest in the region? The rebels or Assad? Well, here's the problem. Okay, I'm going to untime you out. While, yes, Assad has provided logistical support to the axis of resistance in the region, something that I openly mentioned, is not exactly, they weren't exactly wonderful allies to the Palestinians in general. Now, there were some personal reasons for why they were not. Historically speaking, they were much more interested in offering not only logistical support, but also directly allowing Hamas to operate inside of Damascus. Having said that, however, two things are still true. Assad was pretty fucking bad at governance and very ruthless, very brutal. And yes, this absolutely benefits Israel. 1,000,000%. Of course it does. We haven't even gotten to that part of the equation yet. Do you think I'm not going to fucking cover the reality that Israel is already has already made its territorial ambitions and its security concerns known? It's kind of a big deal. And yes, Jelani has said that the West is not our enemy, and that Israel is not their enemy either. After all, Israel itself had worked in the past with al-Nusra. So, Senior administration officials briefed reporters on Syria. The SAO called the CENTCOM strike today on ISIS significant, with B-52s, F-15s, and A-10s dropping 140 munitions on 75 different targets in the Badia Desert. Today, there happened to be a broad gathering across a broad area, the official said, describing it as a part of a pattern of strikes against ISIS meetings and training that would continue. Despite rumors to the contrary, the SAO said, "We did not get any serious outreach from Assad, nor would we have considered it." The official would not say whether the administration planned to lift the foreign terrorist designation on HTS and its leader Abu Muhammad al-Jalani, but suggested the designation was not preventing the U.S. from engaging with the group. "We intend to engage with them appropriately," the official said. "We have contact with all Syrian groups." The official said the regime's chemical weapons were something we were very focused on. "We do have good fidelity on this type of thing." And he said, "I would not envision a scenario of U.S. boots on the ground to neutralize the weapons." On Iran, the official described its national security posture in dire terms. "The entire Iranian-backed artifice in the region, the brittleness, the weakness, the hollowing out, has completely changed the equation in the Middle East. It has lost its main proxy group, its entire military capacity destroyed. They have no strategic air defense, and they can't produce missiles." But he acknowledged it wasn't clear whether that would push Iran towards diplomacy or a decision to build a nuclear weapon. "If they were ever to make a fateful decision towards a nuclear weapon, we will not allow it." The ISIS fight moving forward. There are already clashes between Turkish-backed. So this is the other part that is going to make things interesting. The ISIS fight moving forward. There are already clashes between Turkish-backed HDS and US-backed, mostly Kurdish SDF in Manjib in northwest Syria. Remember how I talked about the both sides being US-backed to varying degrees? It's American-backed forces fighting against other American-backed forces by way of Turkey. And I don't even know if it's the HDS that's fighting. I don't know why they're saying it's the HDS that's fighting. This is the Foreign Affairs and Defense correspondent for PBS. I don't think it's HDS that's fighting the Kurdish SDF. I think it is rather the Turkish-backed forces in the region. The Syrian National Army, the SNA. The SAO said that a handful of senior officials have been speaking to their Turkish counterparts to try and deconflict. Additional fronts opening up, not in anyone's interest. Opposition groups need to work together. Some troops fighting ISIS in Badia were Assad's forces. The SAO said that as they peeled out, SDF filled some of that space, and the U.S. also helped coordinate safe passage of tens of thousands of civilians. Hold on. Doors open. Help coordinate safe passage of tens of thousands of civilians from west to east. Yeah, Pentagon-backed groups versus CIA-backed groups versus Turkish-backed groups. Read NATO American-backed groups. Yeah. Yeah, I was right. SDF commander Mazlum Abdi says they are in contact with HTS and have not clashed with them. So HTS is Al-Qaeda, former Al-Qaeda, I apologize. And I think this reporter is incorrect when he says Turkish-backed HTS and US-backed, mostly Kurdish SDF are fighting. I don't think that that's correct. I think he made a mistake. He meant Turkish-backed SNA. Because, yes, the Turkish-backed forces, the Turkish-backed coalition forces are definitely, they have additional interests in mind. HDS are Islamo-communists, friends with Marxist-Leninist SDF? Yeah. No. You're insane. Okay, dude. Islamo-communists. Yeah, that's why he's reading Why Nations Fail. Yeah, they say no jihad but class jihad, famously. True zakat would be unnecessary once true zakat would be unnecessary once communism has been established. No jihad but class jihad. Congrats on winning the bet. Oh yeah, it's true.
As the liberation of Syria. A chance for change and maybe the possibility for those who want to return to do so. Mayor al-Bakr.
Oh, urgent. The Washington Post citing a senior U.S. administration official. We do not rule out removing Hayat Tahrir al-Sham from the terrorist list.
Is a political activist who fled Aleppo in 2015 after government forces came knocking on his door.
I have a mixed feeling. I didn't sleep for the last 2 days. I was just watching the news every single moment, waiting for this moment. We are in very historical moment. We have so much hope, we hope for better future for Syria.
Then there's Abdul Karim, a neurosurgeon whose 2 little girls were born in exile.
We've been really displaced again and again. So my first daughter was born in Turkey, my second daughter was born in London, and I can't believe that at this moment, that we've been waiting for this moment for not only 14 years, I would say for 54 years, Syrians are waiting for this moment. So I really can't describe how I feel, happiness, optimism, definitely, but really a promise that we will go back to build our country.
A new generation hoping to get to know Syria for the first time.
I don't remember anything of my country, so being able to see my country for practically the first time would be absolutely amazing. I'll get to see all my relatives back home. I'll be really happy, really excited.
Some 20,000 Syrian refugees were resettled in the UK between 20...
It's impossible not to feel joyous in this occasion, for sure. I'm just still very worried about what is to come. But yeah, I totally get why people will be fucking excited at the prospect of being able to return to their homes, return to their country.
2014 and 2020. Many of them never wanted to leave their homes and never imagined that they'd be living here now. And that's why across the UK, so many turned out today, including in Manchester. In West London, Syrian and Iraqi Christians came together to worship. For those in the Syrian Orthodox Church, they hope that reassurances that all will be protected will be honoured in the mosaic of faiths that make up Syria. Do you think many Syrians who moved to the UK will now want to return to Syria?
I think our people, they will have to wait to see what will happen. if safe, democratic, yes, I think majority that return because our country is beautiful. Sunshine, weather, food, everything is our country.
Rula, a primary school teacher, grew up in a neighbourhood where all faiths live side by side.
Mixed emotions, I would say, at the moment. We just want the safety for people, regardless the faith, regardless the religion, regardless the beliefs.
So many have made their lives here in the UK while watching the horrors of war unfold for their families over the last decade. All while conflicts in the wider region and geopolitics of the biggest players buffeted the possibility for peace and fated their futures. There is still anxiety for Syrian communities in the UK, of course, but now also hope that all Syrians' prayers will be answered.
Just want to bring you some breaking news here on Sky News. In the last few moments, we have heard from the Russian state media TASS reporting that President Bashar al-Assad and his family members have arrived in Moscow and Russia is providing them with asylum. That's according to a source in the Kremlin. It had been the case that Russia had told us that Assad had left Syria, that he had left in an aircraft from Syria, but we didn't know what his destination was, and indeed we didn't know where his family was. There had been speculation that maybe his wife and children had left Syria a few days ago. Russia just saying that all the family were out of the country. Well, now, in the last few moments, as I say, Russians...
97%. The people rejoice for the Lion of Syria. The most popular man in any country.
State media is reporting that Bashar al-Assad and indeed his family have arrived in Moscow, in the Russian capital, and Russia is providing them with asylum. At one stage, it was thought perhaps they had fled to the other Syrian ally, Iran. Maybe they were getting asylum in Tehran. But no, we are now told that the family is in Moscow. Let's bring in our Moscow correspondent, Ivor Bennett. Ivor, we were only speaking a few minutes ago, weren't we?
I'm uneducated on what's to come, but why are we worried about... The question was, I can't find it, but someone asked, I'm really not very educated on the Syrian civil war, but why are we worried about what's next to come? Asking from a place of lack of education and ignorance. A couple different reasons. One, you can point to Libya, you can point to Afghanistan, you can point to many other places where, like, depending on what kind of governance Syria will be subjected to, given its diverse background, given its given the pre-existing ethnic strife and the current power vacuum that exists there, these upcoming months will be very important on who gets to rule Syria and how they rule Syria. If you have, the former Al-Qaeda guys running it, as is being presented as like the senior partner in the coalition forces, I don't think that it's going to be all too positive. Wouldn't Afghanistan be a counterexample in terms of general stability? I don't think Afghanistan is better off being run by the Taliban. Do you? Yeah. It's better off run by the Taliban than being invaded by the American forces. But even then, not by a very wide margin. It's not ethnic strife. Most of us love our non-Muslim neighbors more than our Muslim neighbors, the fucking Islamists that got training and support from Turkey and the USA. No, that's what I mean. That's what I mean when I say ethnic strife. I don't mean like people are going to fucking rise up in arms against their, you know, Christian neighbors or some shit. No, I'm saying that depending on who runs Syria and how they run Syria, there will be quote unquote ethnic strife. And besides that, there's still obviously, you know, Kurdish forces that have never really stopped fighting against Kurdish forces that have never stopped fighting against the Turkish-backed Salafist forces either. Also, Afghanistan doesn't have a powerfully armed minority like the Kurds in northern Syria, and the Taliban have been around far longer than the HTS, so locals know them better. Yeah. Like, it's kind of crazy because the way that they're it's if those guys start implementing like really fucking strict controls and start punishing non-Sunni Muslims, like, how the fuck is that any better for the Syrian population?
About the whereabouts of the family, and now we know they are with you in Moscow.
Well, this is only according to one media outlet. This has come from TASS, Russia's state news agency, one of them, and they are quoting a source in the Kremlin, as you say. That is the only report we're getting so far, but it does follow a lot of speculation that Moscow may have offered him refuge this time because...
Yeah, when I say Afghanistan, I'm talking about the post-socialist government period, yes. That's precisely what I'm talking about. Yeah. That's why I said it's almost a direct comparison. Because the USSR-aligned socialist Afghan government was being pretty fucking ruthless to the Muslims in the countryside. They were. They openly were insanely fucking violent. Straight up. So people understandably had a reason to revolt. People had a real reason to fight back against. People had a real reason to fight back against the government. And then Russia, I mean, the USSR moved in and increased the brutality. All the while, America was pumping the forces that were fighting against the Afghan government and also the USSR with weapons, training them, radicalizing them. And those forces would fight against one another as well. So we shall see. Syria is totally different people. I mean, the stakes are different. The involvement is different. But the idea that there aren't like competing militant factions that are competing with one another on ethnic and ideological and religious differences is true. That's the reason why Jelani spends a whole bit of time in Western press talking about how nice he's going to be to the minorities. Do you understand? Because that's the major concern that everybody understandably has.
About 7 to 10 days ago, there were a lot of rumors that he and his family were in Russia following the rebels' offensive in Aleppo. And those rumors were never confirmed, but it did fuel speculation, as I say, that Moscow may have offered him refuge this time following his disappearance and reports that he had fled the country. Russia, in a statement earlier today from the Ministry of the Foreign Affairs here, they said that they don't know where Assad is. They have no information on his location. They said all the information they gave was that he has departed office and that he has left the country following negotiations with a number of participants in the armed conflict. They said that they did not participate in those negotiations, but stressed that they had no idea where he was. But this report from TASS, state news agency here in Russia, does appear to contradict that, and it does, as I say, follow a lot of reports a week ago and rumours a week ago that he was also here, and this was one of the two likely destinations that he was assumed to have gone to, the other one being potentially Iran, Syria's other main ally. But as I say, this is still unconfirmed, but I think it does follow, as I say, a lot of rumours and a lot of speculation, and I think a lot of people would not be surprised if indeed he and his family were in the Russian capital.
Syrian rebel forces have now taken over Hama. That is the second major city they've captured since launching a surprise offensive last week.
You support Hamas, whose main goal and military plans is to put their citizens in danger, but Jelani is too radical for you? You notice how when Israel was doing propaganda against Hamas, they would say Hamas is ISIS? Why do you think they made that comparison to a much more well-known, much more dangerous faction? Yes, there is no comparison between Hamas and fucking Jelani. Like, are you stupid? This guy is literally ISIS. The fuck are you talking about? You're like, oh, I can't believe that, like, I can't believe that you would be more critical. I can't believe you would be more critical of fucking Jelani than Hamas. Yes, of course. I think that one singular nationalist movement under permanent sovereignty by a foreign occupier state is infinitely better than a American-backed terror cell that has beheaded fucking Christians and shit. What the fuck do you mean? Just because he says he's woke now doesn't change that equation for me. I'm gonna be skeptical until proven otherwise, and I hope I'm wrong. But that's an insane fucking thing to say. You, like, a lot of these people that claim that I have no real positions and I'm simply anti-America, unironically are projecting, because they are just pro-America, unconditionally pro-America. Huh? American back, Hamas throws gay people off ledges, man. You're doing it again. You're doing ISIS propaganda, comparing Hamas to ISIS at the behest of defending an ISIS guy. You're doing it in the chat right now. That's insane. You are literally doing this. You are deploying this at the behest of defending a guy who literally did that. What the fuck? Nah, you know who's the real ISIS? Not the former ISIS guy, but Hamas.
Syria's military says its troops had to withdraw from Hama after rebels entered several parts of the city in another blow to President Bashar al-Assad. Now, rebel fighters also freed hundreds of prisoners, saying they were all wrongfully detained. Some residents in Hama are now celebrating the rebel takeover.
Like, I'm not even saying that the Assad regime is good or that it's infinitely better than what is to come for Syria. I'm just understandably maybe a little critical of you know, the Al Qaeda guy. I don't know. Is that crazy? Am I crazy for this? Yeah, no, Assad is a fucking ruthless despot. Okay, he's a ruthless tyrant. And I still worry about what will happen to the Syrian population. I know that there's a lot who are understandably celebrating. Of course, this warrants celebration. If you can't go back to your country, if your fucking family members were unjustly imprisoned and tortured, yeah, of course you're going to be fucking excited that the torturer is no longer in control. It's just crazy that there are chatters in here who are like, no, you do not. This is like Democrats being like, it's not enough that you vote for our candidate. You have to also be very excited to vote for our candidate. Like you have to just be like, nah, dude, there's no issues here. Like, don't ever bring up that that there is some cause for concern here.
Thank God, we've been waiting for this day for a long time, and we're all coming out on the street. This is the happiest day for us. We were afraid to go out at night. We've been waiting for this.
Do you think there'll be a government ruled by Jelani? I hope not.
Feelings that can't be described. It's been 50 years we've been suffering injustice and crime and oppression. This is a historic moment, a priceless moment.
Priceless moment. Now, rebels are vowing to push further south to Homs. That is the next major city on the road to the capital, Damascus. CNN's Jemana Karatse sat down for an exclusive interview with the main rebel.
People are saying it's ridiculous that you said Israel is helping ISIS in Iran. Until Hassan learns to be quiet when he doesn't know what he's talking about, he will just keep making these mistakes over and over again. Just take some time off stream and read up on it, or don't open your mouth about other countries and their people at all. Wait, what? What an incredible research process. Uncritically accept the most obvious information from chat, embellish and conclude that HTS is directly in coordination with Israel. Wait, what the fuck? Why do these guys consistently fucking just, I don't know, maybe from a place of their own ignorance, like act as though certain things that have happened in the past are not real, with the full-blown knowledge that other people don't know? Wait, hold on. Oh. I'm going to call it Uber for my dad. 1, HTS is former Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Number 2, the Al-Qaeda and ISIS equivalents in the region have absolutely collaborated with the Israeli government. I understand it's easy to people to dunk on Twitch streamers in these clips. There's actually reason to believe that Israel at least has tenuous partnership with HTS. If you don't believe Hassan, maybe the ex-Mossad head from 8 years ago will convince you.
Okay, you say no.
Why did Al-Qaeda link jihadist groups in Syria fight against Israel as it committed genocide in Gaza and slaughtered thousands in Lebanon? Because Israel armed and supported them. Don't believe it? Here's the former head Mossad Ephraim Halevi admitting it.
There have been reports that Israel has been treating wounded Syrian rebel fighters in its hospitals on the border, including fighters from Nusra Front, which is, of course, the Al-Qaeda proxy in Syria. Do those reports worry you that Israel's helping wounded Al-Qaeda-aligned fighters?
As I said before, in a different context, it's always useful also to deal with your enemies in a humane way. And I think that when you have people who are wounded and you can deal with them in a humane way, the considerations as to whether to take them in are not simply whether it's politically useful or whether it's politically
So it's purely humanitarian, you say? So there's no tactical or political strategic...
Why do people who say do your research don't understand that, like, maybe they should do their own research sometimes? Like, I mean, this is just one guy, but we've covered this extensively. Yeah, Vice did a documentary on it. Syrian fighters rescued by the IDF, the war next door. Thank you, Elint News. Bonerbox literally said he does his research a few days before he talks about the issues. I don't know why these guys like don't read up. I'll say this. Hate on me all you want, okay? But if you're a political commentator and your North Star basically is just shitting on me, you do end up misinforming your audience quite a bit. And I know that like there is a lot of, there's a market for this kind of commentary. But if your goal is to at least like do better propaganda or to a certain degree educate your to educate your followers, you are going to unfortunately end up causing them to be misinformed. Hold on.
I didn't say there's no tactical. I said the main consideration, the immediate consideration is humane.
But the tactical issues involved, I mean, you know better than me the phrase blowback. You don't think there's going to be blowback against Israel if you get into bed with a group like Nusra Front?
No, I don't think so. I don't think there's going to be blowback.
Why?
Because I think that, unfortunately, the rules of the game in Syria are such that you can do anything that is not possible to be done anywhere else.
Yeah, I think people said that in Afghanistan too. Would you also treat Hezbollah fighters?
No. I would not treat...
Have you not just contradicted what you told me 60 seconds ago about humanely treating your enemies?
No. I think as far as Hezbollah fighters are concerned, with them we have a different account.
So let me be clear, you're happy to treat Al-Qaeda fighters, but not Hezbollah fighters?
We have a different account with Hezbollah, a totally different account. Because Hezbollah has carried out the type of actions against us which preclude us from going into what the Al-Qaeda has done. Al-Qaeda, to the best of my recollection, has up to now not attacked Israel.
Yeah, I mean, that's like... That to me, I feel like is interesting, right? Wait, what the fuck? How do I? Yeah, the enemy of my enemy is my friend is the attitude here, which is why I think it's like really weird that these guys don't know that and are like openly posturing as though the people, my naysayers in this circumstance, are openly posturing as though they are as though I'm wrong. Like, very weird. He won't respond to this. He's only interested in picking off the worst opinions and trying to dunk on those. So Israel treating 5,000 people, including civilians, some of whom were FSA fighters in a period before HTS was even formed, is supposed to be evidence of Israel coordinating with HTS 10 years later. Come back when you learn that not all Arabs are the same, Lamau. Yeah, I don't think all Arabs are the same. That's precisely why I'm saying groups like Al-Nusra are different. Groups that are directly Salafist, engaged in global jihad, engaged in ethnic cleansing, regardless of their change of attitude against other parts of the movement, like Al-Qaeda, that still doesn't, still doesn't change this outcome. Not sure if this dude is ignorant. I blocked him either way, but outside of Al-Jilani saying Israel is not our enemy, and outside of Israel working with Al-Nusra against Hezbollah, Netanyahu himself claimed responsibility for Jilani's success today. Yeah, that's the other side of this equation, which is like, Israel's taking credit for it, and they're saying because we destroyed. Hold on, I got to keep running this video real quick and try to figure out my dad's LAX situation.
Leader Abu Muhammad al-Jolani. He says the Assad regime is, in his words, dead, and explains how his forces have been able to sweep through Syria.
Taking Hama, after taking Aleppo, I mean, how significant is this for you right now?
من الناحية العسكرية فما بعد حما
From a military perspective, what comes after Hama will not be the same as what came before. However, I prefer not to be overly optimistic during the battle. I like to remain cautious and vigilant to avoid complacency and ensure we don't suffer losses while believing we are safe.
What comes after this? What's after Hama?
The course of the battle, as for the secrets of the battle, let's leave them to the unfolding events. You will witness them in reality, which is better than discussing them now.
In a matter of days, you have taken major cities. What's changed? How are you able to do this now?
In recent years, there has been a unification of internal opinions and the establishment of institutional structures within the liberated areas of Syria. This institutionalization included the restructuring within military factions. They entered unified training camps and developed a sense of discipline. This discipline allowed them, with God's guidance, to engage in a battle in an organized manner. The progress and execution of plans have been swift, with clear communication and adherence to commands. They stop where they should stop and withdraw where they should withdraw. The revolution has transitioned from chaos and randomness to a state of order, both in civil and institutional matters and in military operations alike.
Some believe this is happening because the allies of the Assad regime, the Russians, Hezbollah, Iran, that they're weakened, they're preoccupied with other wars. And this is why we are seeing this happen right now. And the Syrian regime itself weakened. Is this what is happening right now? Is this why you chose to launch this offensive right now?
As you know, we are still in the midst of the battle, and discussing such details at this time is not wise.
But you faced more of a resistance in Hama than you did in Aleppo. What do you think happened? Why did the regime withdraw like it did?
The seeds of the regime's defeat have always been within it. It has been effectively dead since that time. However, the Iranians attempted to revive the regime.
They hit him with a DEI rate. It's DE-ISIS, okay? Listen, I'm going to be skeptical. While I share the enthusiasm that many Syrians experience, many Syrians feel on this day, understandably, given that the Assad regime has been toppled, you know, it's going to be a little bit harder. A couple CNN appearances where he looks like Zelensky is not going to make me forget, at the very least, that he is a Al-Qaeda guy. You know what I mean? Is anyone angry at CNN for interviewing him like that Yemeni kid? Oh, dude, this is... The funniest thing is all of those people that got mad at me saying that I was interviewing a terrorist for interviewing a 19-year-old Yemeni kid who is not connected to the Ansar Allah movement at all, that they imagine his connections, are literally the very same people that are like, no, this guy is different now. You're fucking stupid. Like this guy literally has a fucking very long career. Like his resume is filled, okay? Filled to the brim. So for me, it's like, it's hard for me not to be worried. It's hard for me not to be skeptical. If that makes sense.
Regime buying it time, and later the Russians also try to prop it up. But the truth remains, this regime is dead.
In the last year, it seemed like Bashar al-Assad survived the war. He was welcomed back into the Arab fold and on the world stage.
The Arab countries' evaluation of the situation was mistaken.
How is he any different from a Hamas leader who seeks the freedom of Gaza? Both are fighting against oppressors, one internal and the other an occupier. Great question. Hamas leadership is almost entirely preoccupied with the end of the Israeli sovereignty over Palestinian lands. Salafists and Al-Qaeda style, ISIS style groupings in the region actually have expansionist interests beyond simply some kind of liberatory reasons. Hamas in and of itself is also while its inception is, a Muslim Brotherhood cutout that was originally like an Islamic charity, the current leadership of Hamas is comprised of many different ideological backgrounds. It's not entirely like conservative Muslims. Many of them are, but their ultimate goal is not to institute, like they're not anti-Christian, for example. Like there are Christian Palestinians, they're not anti-Christian. Whereas I would say that these guys, at least in the way that they operated historically, were very much anti anyone that is not that does not abide by their version of Sunni Islam. Does that make sense? ISIS sees Syria as a base before expanding. Hamas sees Palestine as their home. Very different reasons for fighting. Yeah. Muslim Brotherhood is not remotely comparable to ISIS or Al Qaeda. No, I'm not saying it's comparable. I'm stating that while the origination of Hamas comes from Islamist fundamentalists, like it's true, these guys are fundamentalists ideologically. Okay, their actions and their goals are entirely different. That is the reason why Jelani had to disavow not only his former acts, but also has had to say over and over again that they are no longer interested in global jihad. They are no longer interested in, fighting the West or fighting against any sort of like non-Sunni Muslim sect, or even Sunni Muslims, really, if they don't abide by the really aggressive, really rigorous mechanisms of control that they want to implement. You have to look at what is changed here. And if you want to understand what has changed here, okay, in his attitude, in the way that he presents himself, in his ideology, you'll probably develop a better understanding of like what my criticisms are, at least. You need to learn about the different varieties of Islamism. It is an extremely diverse set of ideologies as Islam is. Don't be like Jackson Hinkle, you fool. What? I use Salafis or ISIS or Al Qaeda as a catch-all, for the record. Regardless of the different opinions between like Wahhabists and the like. No, he's not wrong. Like what he's trying to say is that there are ideological differences. And I'm still talking to a Western audience and trying to explain this to the best of my ability to a Western audience that does not understand any of these distinctions. And I'm trying to use comparisons that people, I'm trying to use comparisons that will help people understand. I do not know what they will do. Don't be scolded into someone essentially trying to finger wag at you for confusing Mussolini with Hitler. I mean, the distinction is still important. But yes, that's why I call many fascist movements Nazis, even if they're not like, the National Socialist movement. So it's the same principle there. Islamism is diverse and there are very moderate strains, but these guys come from Al Qaeda one way or another. Exactly. Like, there's infighting there for sure. There were infighting amongst the Mujahideen factions as well in Afghanistan. So there's infighting within ISIS, Al Qaeda, Al Nusra, and HTS. But this is hard to ignore. Okay?
Some Arab countries try to separate the regime from Iran's project. This is impossible. Even if the regime wanted this, it can't implement it. It's a subservient relationship. Iran can disengage from the regime, but the regime can't. To describe the regime as victorious is deeply unjust to the many children, people, women subjected to rape in prisons, displaced individuals scattered across the world, those drowning in the seas, and those living in tents on the borders of other countries. What kind of victory are we talking about?
In the past, you have talked about strict Islamic rule. Is that still the plan?
People who fear Islamic governance either have seen incorrect implementations of it or do not understand it properly. We are talking about something that aligns with the traditions and nature of the region. The most important thing is to build institutions. We are not talking about rule by individuals or personal whims. It's about institutional governance. Syria deserves a governing system that is institutional, not one where a single ruler makes arbitrary decisions.
Many Syrians are happy and will be happy to see the end of the Assad regime, but they're also...
Yeah, he read Why Nations Fail, and you can tell. Okay, he is a firm and committed institutional defender. He has become a liberal institutionalist, yes. He's technically not wrong to the Oriental self-righteous r/atheism freaks in the chat, but he's also probably wrong because of his track record. Yeah, that's my only... Guys, there's a couple different things to take note of here. One, the reception overall of a guy like this after his track record, because he suits the purpose of you know, taking down, toppling a guy that America also didn't like in the region, okay? Was he worthy of toppling? Absolutely, okay? I'm not saying that Assad is a good dude at all. Having said that, however, the American media, it's interesting, at least for me, after the months and months, if not a year plus, many months of coverage over Hamas and other emancipatory groups and their broad reception in American media, or even Hezbollah, as a matter of fact, versus a guy like this. When you look at a guy like this and how quickly Western media will present him as a Zelensky-style person, a moderate with a deep, dark past that he has overcome and has changed his attitude on, I think it's important to take note of why Western media is so quick to recognize him as not a guy who was literally a fucking former Al-Qaeda ISIS guy, like a high-ranking Al-Qaeda guy, but instead as a moderate revolutionary figure that is abiding by the wishes of the Syrian population. That's important. I think that's important to understand. The other thing is like, the other thing for me at least is like, I'm going to be always a little bit skeptical of a guy like this. It's just, historically speaking, groups that America's aligned with, and I guess like the only group that I wouldn't say this for is the Syrian Defense Forces, and they are also obviously backed and trained by the American government, and yet I think that they are much more reasonable, much better overall than what this dude is doing or what this dude has done in general. He sounds like a communist. Lamau, Sharia government. Yeah, Sharia governance hasn't been implemented correctly. I like that there was someone said he's the he's not a Sharia Trotskyist. He does not think there should be a permanent global jihad, an international global jihad. He thinks there should be a jihad in one nation only. Yeah, no war, but no jihad, but class jihad. No more global jihad, just jihad in one nation only. You're not wrong about this new guy, but it's witnessed by many people that Assad is a mass murderer and has done horrible shit. Yeah, I know, but you're not going to see any criticisms from me on that front. I'm not going to. I mean, that's correct. You're right. And I have mentioned it time and time again. I'm simply stating that I am, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Worried about what HTS rule would mean, including minorities.
No one has the right to erase another group. These sects have coexisted in this region for hundreds of years, and no one has the right to eliminate them. There must be a legal framework that protects and ensures the rights of all, not a system that serves only one sect, as Assad's regime has done.
Listening to you speaking, you've gone through quite the transformation.
I think you're creating Islamophobic sentiment for having a Western audience. Yes. I am. You're right. I'm deploying Islamophobia. Dude, how is this happening? The people that used to say HasanAbi, the people that literally kept saying HasanAbi, you are in the pocket of Hamas, you are a fucking terrorist, you're a fucking terrorist, are now unironically, without a shred of doubt, with a sense of irony whatsoever, are now turning around and saying I'm doing Islamophobia because I'm saying I'm not immediately ready to trust the fucking former Al-Qaeda guy. Like, that's insane. How does this work? I just don't understand it. Like, I don't. I genuinely can't comprehend how people have no cynicism, no media literacy, no critical thinking skills whatsoever, and they just simply operate on whatever the TV is saying is good. I believe it, and I will just fight for it. I will fight for it over and over again. Like, how the fuck did this happen? It doesn't make any sense. I don't get it. I'm Syrian family still living there. They have the same takes. I don't think you're wrong. Yeah, I just like it's still like they no longer are going to be harmed by the Assad government. That much is true. That's good. Okay, that's a good thing. Having said that, when I say I'm a little skeptical, I'm a little worried about the future prospects, not only because of HTS and the former actions of Jelani, but instead also because of like the Turkish-backed militias there that also have a shit ton of Salafis in them too, directly matched up against the Kurdish militias that America also funds and offers training to, is still worrisome in terms of what Syria will look like and what kind of potential civil war can happen in Syria again. Okay? And this is not just my attitude on the matter. This is something that I think a lot of the regional actors are worried about as well. And we haven't even gotten into Israel. Like, we haven't even talked about how Israel benefits from this destabilization regardless.
Once an Al-Qaeda leader, your group has had affiliations with Al-Qaeda, with ISIS, and now you are projecting this image of a moderate leader and a moderate group. What is HTS right now?
Let's stop operating this Marvel-style mindset of heroes versus villain. Assad is a tyrant and a monster. He's good. He's out. Al-Jelani is an Al-Qaeda operative who committed atrocities as a part of the militias for 2 decades. Yeah, I said that, and then people get mad at me and they say, you're not woke enough. You're doing Islamophobia on Jelani, who is now reformed. Like, how dare you? Like, do you not understand the issue here? Which is why I can't, like, explain. Like, I keep repeating myself over and over again because there's, like, hella people in the chat going, no, you don't understand. Jelani is good. Like, that's what's crazy about the situation.
ISIS. And now you are projecting this image of a moderate leader and a moderate group. What is HTS right now?
Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is one of the factions in the region, just like all the others. Now we're talking about a larger project. We're talking about building Syria. Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is merely one detail of this dialogue, and it may dissolve at any time. It's not an end in itself, but a means to perform a task confronting this regime. Once that task is complete, it will transition to a state of governance, institutions, and so on. I believe that everyone in life goes through phases and experiences, and these experiences naturally increase a person's awareness. A person in their 20s will have a different personality than someone in their 30s or 40s, and certainly someone in their 50s.
That's crazy, man. That's actually wild. He said it was just a phase. You know, my Al-Qaeda, my moment, my Al-Qaeda moment was just a phase. You have the same take as him when it comes to being reformed? I do. It's just that it's hard for me to believe that. For him, at least. At least for the time being. He's not like a fucking YouTuber who used to be edgy. Okay? Like, what are we talking about? You cannot compare a former YouTuber in like the fucking PewDiePie era who said like an anti-Asian slur or something, who has apologized for it many years past, to a motherfucker who was, whose phase was beheading Christians. Like, what are you talking about? Like, the funniest part about this is that, like, there are groups in this region that Americans and Westerners broadly point to as like the most violent forms, and they paint the entirety of Islam with this broad brush. They say, oh, you like Hamas? Oh, you want to behead gay people and then throw them off rooftops? And it's like, and then there are dudes who have done that, and they're like, no, but those dudes have reformed. So what the fuck? It's just whoever is, America's asset, whoever gets like positive coverage in the media, and you're just fine with that. That's it. I guess this is a Gen Z try to cancel Eminem moment. They're trying to cancel the ISIS guy, dude. But yeah, HTS is not even the only group here that is at play, that is a problem. There are obviously going to be a lot of issues between the Kurdish militias and the Turkish-backed militias. So that's a major issue as well. These people used to say I'm a pan-Turanist and also a neo-Ottomanist who wants to restore the Ottoman Caliphate. And when I actually because they haven't paid attention to my criticisms of Turkey's actions in Syria beforehand, okay, specifically against like the Kurdish areas, specifically against the Kurdish territories, they now are unironically taking the pro-Turkey position. If I was a secret Erdogan supporter or a secret neo-Ottomanist, this would be a fantastic opportunity. I'd be like, this is great. Erdogan has shown once again that he is the guy in the region, okay? He is the fucking man in the region after this past week. Straight up. He packed that shit up. He did.
Bugün açıkçası çok büyük bir mutluluk ve sevinç içerisindeyiz. Halep'e tekrar yıllar sonra kavuşmanın mutluluğu içerisindeyiz. Bundan sonra inşallah Halep'te Türkmen varlığının güçlenmesi, tekrardan gerçek noktaya dönmesi noktasında da bizden gelen gayretleri göstereceğiz. Burası bir Türk yurdu. İnşallah bu Türkmen yurduna da, Türk yurduna da hep birlikte sahip çıkacağız. Bizim için önemli bir süreç aslında.
Yeah. Erdogan is like, bro, what the fuck are you talking about? He's like, no, we want to put the Syrians he's like, yeah, it's Türkmen nüfusu var Suriye'de, Irak'ta, yeni mi öğrendin? Onlar oralarda hep.
Yeniden kurtarılması.
Neyse, bir şey söylemeyeceğim.
Mücadele bugün itibariyle başlıyor. İnşallah en yakın zamanda hep birlikte halde görüşmek üzere. Hoşça kalın sevgiler.
Yeah, he just flashes the for living in that region under U.S., which is worse than Al Qaeda. He of course might follow unknowingly wrong paths. I don't think ISIS would say that. Now they don't believe any of the bad beliefs they say. I say let's wait and see. He's done. What? I say let's wait and see if he even be the one to control Syria. Let's just wish for the Syrian good people and fuck Israel and Assad. Yeah, except, you know, I don't think these are the guys who are saying fuck Israel. That's my point. But, you know. Why does Turkey have such a hard bone against Kurds that they won't leave the Syrian ones alone? There are a shit ton of Kurds as an ethnic minority in Turkey, and any sort of nation state project for the 35 million ethnic Kurds that live in diaspora that don't have a nation state for themselves is always going to be a significant threat, political threat internally. So for them, I think the Turkish government's interest is a Kurdish nation state that they have designs for, rather than one that is backed by America, like an American Israel, but for Kurds. So that is, you know, they will consistently continue to dominate all of the areas where Kurds live. And that's it. What? ISIS cannot be compared to HTS or any other group in the region. ISIS has no desire to nation build. This is such a funny thing to say because, like, I mean, ISIS tried to do a fucking nationalized healthcare system too. That doesn't change their brutality. You know what I mean? Like, I remember a time when ISIS literally stole the NHS logo when they were trying to do woke NHS. Like, yes, they are a violent, expansionist militia, incredibly violent. But to say that they have no interest in, like, nation building, you just don't agree with it, and I don't either. But, you know, the name Islamic State, it's literally in the name. The second S is state. That's what the first S comes from. The second letter in ISIS is literally state. Okay?
Are those days behind you?
Sometimes it's essential to adjust to reality, and because someone who rigidly clings to certain ideas and principles without flexibility cannot effectively lead societies or navigate complex conflicts like the one happening in Syria.
People listening to this are going to wonder why they should believe you. You are still a specially designated global terrorist by the United States with a $10 million bounty on your head. Your group is a prescribed terrorist organization by the United States, by the UN, by the EU, and others.
I say to people, don't judge by words, but by actions. I believe the reality speaks for itself. These classifications are primarily political and at the same time wrong. I define a terrorist as someone who intentionally kills civilians, harms innocents, or displaces people.
Like, no follow-up to that. Like, okay, well, what about your actions that was just that? It's crazy. He sounds like me, bro. He said we must preserve these institutions. Like, there's no way that you can operate without good governance. We will cease to exist if necessary. Also, terrorism is a political classification, is a political designation, and that is oftentimes unjustly given to non-state actors that happen to be outside of the periphery of American State Department interests, which is hilarious because now that he is in the American State Department interests, more openly at least, Now there's no reason to utilize like a cutout or anything like that, and they can directly just take him off the terrorist list. Yeah, he's like a HasanAbi head. You think he's in chat right now? Yeah, well, we'll see. Islamic governance inherently contains numerous socialist policies, so it's not outlandish for him to have these takes. I mean, wait, HasanAbi, do you disagree with him? No, of course I don't disagree with him. But who's saying this and why they're saying it also matters. Yes, on its face, he's saying all the right shit. Okay, I agree. He is repeating a lot of the things that I have said many, many times over. The problem is, you know, it's important to recognize what he has done.
If we're being honest, many of the wars waged by major powers in Arab, Muslim, and even non-Muslim countries have involved the deliberate killing of thousands, the destruction of homes, and the displacement of millions. Even the regime itself is guilty of such actions.
But the US and others would say is that you were parts of groups that did exactly that.
Personally, I have not done these things. The situation must be understood in its historical context. There was a massive war in Iraq that deeply stirred people's emotions, prompting many to go there. The circumstances of that war led people to various places, and my path led me to one of those locations. Given my level of awareness and my young age at the time, my actions evolved to where I am today. I didn't go to Iraq with those intentions. I went to defend the Iraqi people. When I returned to Syria, I didn't want to bring what happened in Iraq into Syria. That's why there were disagreements between us and ISIS.
People would be wondering why you've agreed to speak with us.
What is happening in Syria is significant for the entire world. This event has positive repercussions globally because under the regime's rule, Syria became a source of concern and trouble for everyone. Stabilizing Syria will bring many people back. Today, in the liberated areas, about 1/3 of the population lives in camps, approximately 1.5 million people. I believe we can soon reach a point where there are no camps. With the rehabilitation of the liberated areas, people will return to their homes. Many refugees in Turkey will likely return, as will a significant number of refugees in Lebanon and Jordan. Even refugees in Europe may return to rebuild their country.
A fascinating interview there. I want to thank Joanna Kratze and her crew for that exclusive.
What happened in the Middle East? After 13 years of...
Just to confirm, you're a profile of Assad, but are wary the current groups at play seizing power just hopped on. Assume you weren't going full tanky. What do you mean going full tanky? Like, I don't know why people just like imagine the positions of other people. No, I'm not pro-Assad. Of course, I'm not pro-Assad. I do recognize that there are obviously going to be a lot of sectarian. There's going to be a lot of sectarian infighting that occurs. Also, I'm very skeptical of the fucking former Al-Qaeda guy. That's it. That's the most like reduced, most condensed take. Chatter wants to clip you? Yeah. Ay, ay, ay. You think he's telling the truth? No, I don't think he's telling the truth.
Civil war in Syria. More than half a century of brutal authoritarian...
I don't think he's telling the truth. No, I've seen this play out so many times in the same fucking region, okay? You offer training and logistical support to these groups, and they're very violent. You use them to your advantage in destabilizing certain countries. Then you turn around, okay? You then turn around and you know, prop them up. You prop them up, or they basically win the infighting that occurs afterwards in the power vacuum. And then they obviously decide that maybe they weren't going to do like neoliberal implementations of institutional defense. Maybe they were just going to do the shit that they said they were going to do and start doing that shit. Okay? And then maybe America, a decade later, is upset because of, let's say, their resentment towards or their mistreatment of like the Kurdish minorities or the Syrian Christian population. I'm just making it up right now. I'm like saying 10 years in the future, these guys are running the show, and they start doing horrible shit back to the Christians in Syria. Okay? There's going to still be economic instability. When there's economic instability, ironically enough, that was like, you know, that played a formative role. Climate change and economic instability played a formative role in the Syrian civil war as well. So those problems are not going to go away. In that period of instability, what do the what would this guy do? Who would he make out to be the enemy? I suspect the earlier villains. Okay? Either the Kurds or the Christians or, I don't know, some other ethnic or religious minority. Then they start attacking that ethnic and religious minority so viciously that America decides to intervene. Okay? Now they're mad. Now they're mad again. Well, that's how 9/11 happened. Last time, at least. Yeah, Alevites, Alawites. With the recent collapse of the Assad regime in Syria, the game changes dramatically. It's a big loss for Russia and Iran, which is good. However, the jihadist forces that have replaced Assad create major problems for Israel, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq. As to the U.S. interest in Syria, there are over 50,000 ISIS prisoners primarily being held by the Kurdish forces while President Trump destroyed the caliphate. These ISIS fighters planned and executed plots against the American homeland and our allies. A breakout and reestablishment of ISIS is a major threat to the U.S. and our friends. Obama and Biden got this wrong big time, requiring President Trump to clean up their mess. I like that we're basically setting it up as a potential pretext to, you know, re-invade or to full-blown invade. You oversaw the ethnic hate on groups in the region. Muslims and Christians have always coexisted in the region peacefully, especially in Syria. No reason for that to change. Brother, I don't think you understand. When I talk about these kinds of tensions, it's not real organic, okay? It's not organic. It's those in power, okay? It's like looking at the Assad regime and its prosecution of people unjustly. Do you think that was because neighbor hated neighbor? Or do you think it was the government doing that? We talked about the enmity caused early on, or at least Lenin's takes on the enmity caused towards Jews as a mechanism of destabilization by those in power, a misdirection. It's always the same shit. In the most reductive terms, it's divide and conquer. It does not mean that there's like real hatred, real animosity between, I don't know, like the Christian Syrians and Sunni Syrians and Shia Syrians. I'm not saying that at all. I'm simply stating that those in power will engage in such acts. This is crazy. My man.
Ruled by Bashar Assad and his father before him. Rebel forces have forced Assad to resign his office and flee the country. We're not sure where he is, but there's word that he's in Moscow. At long last, the Assad regime has fallen. This regime brutalized and tortured and killed literally hundreds of thousands of innocent Syrians. The fall of the regime is a fundamental act of justice. It's a moment of historic opportunity for the long-suffering people of Syria to build a better future for their proud country. It's also a moment of risk and uncertainty. As we all turn to the question of what comes next, the United States will work with our partners and the stakeholders in Syria to help them seize an opportunity to manage the risks. You know, for years, the main back.
I know this is an ignorant question, but why is the Western media so understanding and willing to platform al-Jilani even though they generally categorize Arabs as less than human, especially Palestinians as the last year? What is an exception for the West? Isn't there some point when the fundamental disagreements of the West and people like al-Jilani trump their common ground? No. No. Islamophobia doesn't factor into this equation. Like, even people who are still Islamophobic will be like, no, these are the good guys, though. This is why I constantly try to explain how consent is manufactured. Okay? These guys provide utility for American interests. And therefore, the American media has much more understanding, okay? They consider their former actions as shortcomings. That they are actually, they're reformed now. No such attitude exists for those who are against America or America's allies. I'll give you one example. Hamas's founding charter had a whole bunch of anti-Semitic nonsense in it. I believe it was in 1988 when they wrote the original charter. It had a sea of not only anti-Israel, but like anti-Jewish statements involved in it. In 2017, Hamas actually changed this charter because they wanted to get international recognition. They said that it was not reflective of their values in general, and they hadn't really touched their charter from the jump. So they decided we're going to be more reasonable in our governance, and also we are going to change the structure of our charter, change it in its entirety. In 2017, they reformed and wrote a new charter that completely carved out all of the, completely cut out all the anti-Semitic shit and basically said, this is just about Israel, yada, yada, yada. Okay? Now, you don't have to agree. You don't have to believe that. Okay? You don't have to believe that at all. But the reality of the matter is, if Hamas was not against Israel and an emancipatory movement that is born out of the people's desire to live free of Israeli sovereignty, live free of this apartheid, live free of this occupation, and instead was, I don't know, a militia group that you could use against America's enemies in the region, okay, then American media would reflect that change. Okay, they would talk about it all the time. But they don't. It's just something to pay attention to. And the very same people that will say, Hamas are barbaric, rapist, monster, terrorists with an antiquated anti-Semitism, and they're operating on the basis of just doing anti-Semitic acts and not necessarily a real emancipatory struggle whatsoever, are the very same people who will turn around and say, no, Golani is actually the GOAT. He's incredible. He's a fantastic fighter. And that, the Assad government was ruthless, which is true. They were brutal. The Assad government was brutal. Okay. And certainly not just to radical Islamist fundamentalists or anything like that. Nobody says that. That's just funny that you said that, because someone literally said exactly that. This guy says Golani is the GOAT. A couple bars later, someone says, nobody says that. So I guess some people are saying that. One must ask the question why some people are saying that. That's because the media offers a permission structure to say that. That's it. He said, unfortunate. Anyway, I'm simply stating that I am still very much worried. And it's not just Jelani either. My fears are not specifically around Jelani. I think that it's good that many Syrians now feel that they can go back to Syria to be with their families. That's a fucking fantastic thing. That's an incredible thing. It's an incredible moment. It's worthy of celebration. Having said that, however, I don't think the strife is over and the conflict is over.
Backers of Assad have been Iran, Hezbollah, and Russia. But over the last week, their support collapsed, all three of them, because all three of them are far weaker today than they were when I took office. And let's remember why. After Hamas attacked Israel on October the 7th, 2023, when much of the world responded with horror, Iran and its proxies chose to launch a multi-front war against Israel. That was a historic mistake on Iran's part. Today, Iran's main territorial proxy, Hezbollah, is also on its back. Only 12 days ago, I spoke from the Rose Garden about the ceasefire deal in Lebanon, a deal that was only possible because Hezbollah has been badly degraded. Meanwhile, Hamas has been badly degraded as well. Iran's own military capabilities have been weakened. Iran tried 2 times to attack Israel, and the United States and built a coalition of countries to directly defend Israel and help defeat those attacks. All this made possible for Iran and Hezbollah to continue to prop up, impossible, I should say, for them to prop up the Assad regime. Additionally, Russia's support for Assad also failed. And that's because Ukraine, backed by our American allies, has put up a wall of resistance against the invading Russian forces, inflicting massive damage on the Russian forces. And that has left Russia unable to protect its main ally in the Middle East. Excuse my cold. The upshot for all this is, for the first time ever, neither Russia, nor Iran, nor Hezbollah could defend this abhorrent regime in Syria. And this is a direct result of the blows that Ukraine, Israel, have delivered upon their own self-defense with unflagging support of the United States. You know, over the past 4 years, my administration pursued a clear and principled policy towards Syria. First, we made clear from the start sanctions on Assad would remain in place unless he engaged seriously in a political process to end the civil war, as outlined by the UN Security Council resolution passed in 2015. But Assad refused, so we carried out a comprehensive sanction program against him and all those responsible for atrocities against the Syrian people. Second, we maintained our military presence in Syria, our counter-ISIS, to counter the support of local partners as well on the ground, their partners, never ceding an inch of territory, taking out leaders of ISIS, ensuring that ISIS can never establish a safe haven there again. Third, we've supported Israel's freedom of action against Iranian networks in Syria. And against
I did cover the torture prison earlier today, Assad's torture prison. Please, I beg you, cover the Sidnaya freeing of the political prisoners, over 100,000 political prisoners in a nightmare known as a human slaughterhouse. Yeah, I covered it earlier.
Against actors aligned with Iran who transported lethal aid to Lebanon. And when necessary, ordered the use of military force against Iranian networks to protect U.S. forces. Our approach has shifted the balance of power in the Middle East. Through this combination of support for our partners, sanctions, and diplomacy, and targeted military force when necessary, we now see new opportunities opening up for the people of Syria and for the entire region. Looking ahead, the United States will do the following. First, we'll support Syria's neighbors, including Jordan, Lebanon, Iraq, and Israel, should any threat arise from Syria during this period of transition. I will speak with leaders of the region in the coming days. I had long discussions with all of our people earlier this morning. And I'll send senior...
I can't tell if his liver is failing and that's why he's so yellow, if it's the lighting, or he's been getting some tan. But yeah, that's the foreign policy goat right there, chat. You want to know the real foreign policy goat? There it is.
Liderler arasında zaten 2 kişi kaldık.
There are only 2 people left among the leaders in the world.
Şu anda bir ben varım.
Just me.
Bir de Vladimir Putin var.
And Vladimir Putin.
Yani bunu ben olduğum için söylemiyorum. Yani vakayı söylüyorum.
He's saying, I'm not just saying this because it's me. I'm just telling you how it is.
Tabii 22 yıl bu fakirin görev süresi var.
For 22 years, I've been working.
Neredeyse bir o kadar da Sayın Putin'in var. Diğerleri hepsi elimine oldu.
Yeah, Putin has also done that. Everyone else has been either eliminated or they've left.
Şu anda tabii süreç devam ediyor. Temennimiz odur ki bu münasebetleri bu diyalog içerisinde sürdürmeye devam edelim. Tabii Merkel'in Almanya siyasetinde onulmaz bir yeri vardı.
Saying Merkel is irreplaceable in German politics.
Mesela
fakiri niye çevirmedin? As a fake humble. Değil mi? Kendine fakir demesinin sebebi şey. Yani neden kendine fakir diyor bilmiyorum. Neresi fakir amına koyayım? O adam fakirse hepiniz ölüyorsunuz yani.
Merkel gittikten sonra Almanya'da siyaset bitti.
He says after Merkel leaves politics ended in Germany. That's what he said.
Çok ilginçtir. Ama ben Almanya'da mesela çok takdir ettiğim, hatta daha ileri gideceğim, sevdiğim bir lider.
He says there is a leader in Germany that I actually appreciate. Dare I take it one step further? Love.
Schroeder'dir.
Schroeder. Who I think is, Gerhard Schroeder, who in Germany does not enjoy his high standing in popularity contests, although it was the economic reforms initiated during his reign, from which the Merkel administration has massively benefited later on. So interesting.
Schroeder'in bize karşı olan saygısı çok.
He's saying Schroeder has a lot of respect for us. It's kind of funny because, like, for him, everything revolves around respect for Turkey. Is Turkey at the table? Is Turkey the table? And for the record, this past week has shown Turkey is the entire table. Not just at the table. Turkey is literally the fucking table, and they just flipped the table. Bizi kıskanıyorlar abi. Yeah. Yes, Turkey does have free healthcare. Turkey has a nationalized healthcare system alongside a private insurance, if you would like, as well.
Çok farklıydı ve hakikaten iyi bir liderdi.
He's saying Schroeder was different and very good.
Münasebetleri çok farklıydı. Ve Ramazan'da mesela benim oturduğum masada Schroeder bira filan içmezdi.
He's saying during Ramadan, Schroeder used to respect him. And wouldn't drink beer at the same table that he was sitting at during Ramadan. Again, everything revolves around his own. Everything here, his entire analysis is conducted on the virtue of, do they respect me or not?
Böyle saygısı olan bir insandı. Farklı bir insandı.
He's a different guy. He had a lot of respect.
Bizim mesela Schroeder'le şu anda hala.
Okay, he's just still glazing Schroeder. I don't really care. The important part about it was when he said, it's just me and Vladimir Putin. We're the only two fucking leaders. No one else. And he also pointed to his longevity. Yesterday, one moderate rebel leader gave a nice speech. Oh, this is gray zone, so I don't know. Aleppo's Al Ravda Mosque, promising not to harm any residents, even if they're from any other Muslim sect or Christians or Armenians. Today, they uploaded a new video showing them beating defenseless Kurds. Yeah, I don't know when that video is from. But I do know that they're already fighting. There is already some infighting happening. U.S. forces conducted over 75 precision airstrikes in central Syria, targeting ISIS camps and operatives. CENTCOM vows to prevent ISIS from reconstituting or conducting external operations. Also, Israel has, this is sourced by the New York Times, Israeli ground forces have passed the demilitarized zone and crossed into Syrian territory for the first time since 1973, Israeli officials say, according to the New York Times. Israeli ground forces advanced beyond the demilitarized zone on the Syria-Israel border over the weekend, marking their first overt entry into Syrian territory since the 1973 October War, according to two Israeli officials speaking anonymously to discuss sensitive developments. The Israeli deployment came amid a successful push by rebel groups in Syria to drive President Bashar al-Assad out of power and out of the country, prompting neighboring states to brace for more regional instability created by the southern fall and fight. Now, what I don't understand is Israel has collaborated on that same fucking border with al-Nusra in the past, like directly. Something that Loner Box and all those other fucking losers don't know about, which is why they were criticizing me. But they have directly considered when that video was of SNA fighters, not HTS, by the way. Oh, thank you for course correcting, Elit News. I feel like a lot of people are getting SNA confused with HTS. SNA is the Syrian National Army that is backed by the Turkish. They're still pretty radical themselves. There's plenty of elements within the SNA that are radical, but they are the ones who fucking hate the Kurdish militias. Now, going back to what I was saying about Israel. What was the border scuffle that they had? Or not scuffle, but like Israel al-Nusra collaboration. Let's see. I mean, this is from Al Monitor, but this was are Israel and Jabhat al-Nusra coordinating on attacks in Syria. Israel has arrested a Syrian Druze man who documented contact between Israel and the al-Nusra front. Israel offered medical help to fighters as well. So why am I mentioning this? Why am I mentioning this? They have also given weapons. IDF chief finally acknowledges that Israel supplied weapons to Syrian rebels. Don't believe any mainstream news you read on the internet? Okay, dog. Hassan is not even Muslim anymore. He needs to revert to Islam. If he didn't grow up in Islam, he wouldn't have this opinion on Syria and Erdogan. America has brainwashed him. Wait, what? Okay, man. Anyway, outgoing IDF Chief of Staff Gadi Eisenkot this weekend acknowledged for the first time that Israel has indeed provided weaponry to Syrian rebel groups in the Golan Heights during the country's 7-year civil war. Until Sunday, Israel would say officially only that it had given humanitarian aid to Syrian opposition groups across the border, while denying or refusing to comment on reports that it had supplied them with arms as well. So what's really interesting about this is, well, they have collaborated with al-Nusra in the past. They have collaborated with, like, HSD style groups. Okay, maybe not directly with HSD, but I would assume, HTS. But what I don't understand is why, if they have collaborated with al-Nusra, and they're saying Israel Prime Minister helped topple Assad, but it wasn't planned. It just happened to be, kismet. Right? Then why are they invading Syria? Why are they going further into Syria? The Israeli deployment came amid a successful push by rebel groups in Syria to drive President Bashar al-Assad out of power. Why are they doing that? If they were so worried about, the groups that come after, this is the peak. Groups that Israel has worked with, successfully collaborated with openly, they are now in charge of large swaths of the Syrian lands. So why is it that Israel now has additional security concerns? It's very interesting. One statement, two languages. There's one sentence that's pretty important that Netanyahu says, only in English, not at all in Hebrew, about the presence of IDF in the buffer zone. This is a temporary defense position until a sustainable arrangement is found. Okay, I can't speak Hebrew, so I don't know.
The Syrian army abandoned its positions. We gave the Israeli army the order to take over these positions to ensure that no hostile force embeds itself right next to the border of Israel. This is a temporary defensive position until a suitable arrangement is found. Equally, we send a hand of peace The Syrian army have
Interesting.
But Israel, which borders Syria, it has deployed additional forces to the occupied Golan.
I just don't personally understand why there would be any additional temporary threats to Israeli sovereignty and security if the guys that they have in the past aligned with are now in control and Assad is gone. I thought Assad was the dangerous threat to Israel's sovereignty and security. And yet, for some reason, Israel's temporary security concerns have once again reared its ugly head. Israel always has temporary security concerns. Israel always has a right to defend itself. This is how Israel basically traffics its own expansionist policies. And that's precisely what's happening here. Anyway, from what I understand, here is obviously our Yemen researcher, Alden Markey. I don't know if he's in the chat right now. He says, now that Assad's government has officially collapsed and he has fled Syria, Yemen can now finally address in public what happened to its Syrian embassy. Assad closed the pro-Ansar Allah embassy in Damascus in October 2023 in exchange for rapprochement with Saudi Arabia. The entire embassy staff was kicked out and the embassy premises and promptly replaced with stooges of the pro-Saudi Yemeni regime in exile. I happened to speak very cordially with both of the two Yemeni ambassadors before Assad turned everything to shit. The October 2023 closure was very embarrassing and bewildering. There was no prior notice, nothing. What? Syrian analyst on Israel's invasion of the north? Okay, that's Syrian girl, and she is not a quote-unquote Syrian analyst. I'm sorry, you have to be a little bit more, you know. There are a lot of people who aren't just Syrian analysts. There are definitely a lot of people who are propagandists, sometimes anti-Semitic, and also pro-Assad at the same time. Okay? I would not go there for analysis. So yeah. It's ridiculous overall. If you care about sources from the Syrian rebels on the ground, let me tell you that their help was a drop in the sea. Your ideas is true that Israel really did want to topple Assad. We would have seen anti-air support and constant PR, but trust me, Israel loves Assad far more than everyone else. So this is also an interesting take as well. And I don't have like a fully fleshed out position on this. I have heard people say this, but I think the reality of the matter is Assad, while incompetent, was still very much a part of the supply chain for Iran, for the axis of resistance in the region. Assad also relied on Hezbollah for defending its position. So I think while he wasn't necessarily pro-Palestinian emancipation, especially the direct issues that the Palestinians had, that Hamas specifically had with the Assad regime, and early on Hamas's support for the revolution, I think caused a lot of disagreements and genuine like a real issue for Assad in general. So while they were still in alignment due to Iran basically utilizing Syria as a way to bring in weapons into the region, they weren't like a major power player. He compromised for literally all sides just for the sole purpose of staying in power. He made so many promises to Israel as we saw them give intel on Iran. This is what the Iranian government is saying as well. They're saying that like Assad was potentially giving Iranian positions away, intel away to Israel. I mean, I don't know. I get it. I mean, he was a fucking major opportunist and really bad. Yemeni officials articulating frustrations that they have with the Syrian government of Assad, the most major one being that they have requested the Syria assist in opening a front in the occupied Golan Heights against Israel, and each time the Syrians refused. Yeah. The wider understanding of the region is that any government in power in the Middle East in some way benefits the American interest and by extension Israel's. Maybe not directly, but some to an extent. And yes, that includes Iran. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, Assad is he doesn't always consistently play ball in the same way that like Gulf states do. And even then, Gulf states don't always consistently play ball in the way that America wants, which is why Israel has to be there. So if you don't consistently play ball with America and Israel, then you will get toppled inevitably, especially if you already are a brutal tyrant. And due to your brutality, there is a very valid reason for people that want to topple you. America will always go in and use that to their advantage. And that's it. It's like Trump. Assad loves Assad and not much more. I mean, I guess. Well, speaking of Trump, Tulsi Gabbard also likes Assad. Yeah, I am not just posting this here for the chatters. Please never go to her for analysis. She's a genocidal maniac. Okay, Elent News, let's be real. There's a lot of fucking genocidal maniacs on OSINT Twitter, okay? Many of them overwhelmingly are genocidal maniacs at the behest of Israel, so it doesn't track in the same way. But I am pretty consistent in my position of not listening to any genocidal maniac, whether they are ostensibly on my side of any sort of political struggle, which she is not, regardless. But let's make no mistake, okay? I know what OSINT Twitter looks like. They fucking comprised entirely of genocidal maniacs of different varieties of things, or of different ideological background.
Golan Heights area, and during the last year is understood to have carried out several airstrikes on groups which support Hamas and Hezbollah as its wars in Gaza and then Lebanon were underway. The Israeli military is also reported to have struck Syrian military compounds near Damascus early today, including weapons depots. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu posted these comments on the fall of the Assad regime in Syria to his social media accounts.
This is a historic day for the Middle East. The collapse of the Assad regime, the tyranny in Damascus, offers great opportunity, but also is fraught with significant dangers. This collapse is a direct result of our forceful action against Hezbollah and Iran.
I also do hate that he's so happy about this. Like, it does benefit him. Instability in the axis of resistance supply chain, regardless of Assad's like lack of interest in helping Palestinians, instability in the axis of resistance supply chain is good for Israel. So for him, this is fantastic. They've crippled Hezbollah's leadership. They've bombed every fucking Shia village in southern Lebanon. So now the Lebanese economy is already destroyed, and now they have to do a period of reconstruction to make sure that they, to make sure that that people can still survive in that area. And now the last vector of instability, a massive country in the region that was utilized as a part of the Iranian supply chain, is no longer controlled by a guy who is somewhat unstable from his perspective.
Assad's main supporters. It set off a chain reaction of all those who want to free themselves from this tyranny and its suppression. But it also means we have to take action against possible threats. One of them is the collapse of the Separation of Forces Agreement from 1974 between Israel and Syria. This agreement held for 50 years. Last night it collapsed. The Syrian army abandoned its positions. We gave the Israeli army the order to take over these positions to ensure that no hostile force embeds itself right next to the border of Israel. This is a temporary defensive position until a suitable arrangement is found.
Soon before Erdogan's assault in Syria, Netanyahu literally threatened Assad and his beast, saying he's playing with fire. Yeah, because Erdogan and Benjamin Netanyahu are this, bro. This. They are. Recep Tayyip Erdogan is a servant of Western interests. It does not matter that he plays both sides. It does not matter that he has trade relations with Russia. It doesn't matter that he has trade relations with China. Recep Tayyip Erdogan oversees the second largest military in NATO. Recep Tayyip Erdogan oversees America's nuclear arsenal in the Incirlik base. Anyone that tries to tell you that Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Benjamin Netanyahu are not directly aligned only hear what he has to say in public, and he has all the smoke for Israel in public. He always says, like, fuck you, Israel. You are Netanyahu. He says a number of different things. And yet, the oil and gas that Israel needs to power its energy grid, I believe around 30% of it still comes through Azerbaijan, through Turkish ports, directly into Israeli ports, or directly through pipelines. Okay? Israel uses a radar in Turkey to protect the sky, that too. Turkey has also always trained Israeli Air Force fighters. That is incorrect. No, it's not. It is not incorrect at all. You are just oblivious. Okay? This is service level conspiratory thinking. Nothing I said is service level conspiratory thinking. You're coping because you want Erdogan to be this, liberator in the region. You want to fantasize. You want to fantasize that Recep Tayyip Erdogan is going to, I guess, like restore the Ottoman Caliphate to its glory or some shit. Okay, that he cares about the Ummah. Turkey and Israel are at odds? No, they're not. Turkey and Israel have never been at odds, and they will never be at odds. No, Recep Tayyip Erdogan is simply responding to the pressure, the real pressure of the Turkish population. The Turkish population hates Israel, whether they are Islamists themselves, which, are important to Recep Tayyip Erdogan's winning coalition, of voters, or whether they are, people that are interested in the emancipation of Palestinians. This means that there are a shit ton of people in Turkey that want Palestine to be free. Recep Tayyip Erdogan has to respond to these demands because, after all, while he is authoritarian, there is still some semblance of democracy in Turkey. And that's precisely what's happening here. A better statement would be any government is Turkey will always be hand in hand with Israel, even if it wasn't Erdogan. Yes, that is true. No matter what happens, no matter who's in charge, as long as Turkey is a NATO nation, it will always be pro-America. And obviously, America's major interests in the region are to defend Israel unconditionally. But this is very beneficial for Erdogan in general. Not only does he get to enjoy the freedom, he gets to, bully like European allies every now and then. And also simultaneously, he gets to pummel Kurdish forces in northern Syria and maintain control over big parts of Syria. And that benefit is now playing itself out in the way that the Assad regime was toppled by Turkish-backed forces. So there it is. Recep Tayyip Erdogan has played both sides, and he has ultimately come out on top.
Equally, we send a hand of peace to all those beyond our border in Syria, to the Jews, to the Kurds, to the Christians, and to the Muslims who want to live in peace with Israel. We're going to follow events very carefully. If we can establish neighborly relations and a peaceful relations with the new forces emerging in Syria, that's our desire. But if we do not, we'll do whatever it takes to defend the state of Israel and the border.
Well, that was Benjamin Netanyahu. Well, let me go now to Charles Lister, who is in Doha. Sorry, we're going to go to our guest in a moment. First of all, let's hear from John Donaldson, who's got...
Charles Lister is the guy that's like moderate jihadis guy. I mean, his analysis on Palestine is really good. But on Syria, he's a little bit, I don't know. He hates Muslims, dude. This motherfucker's Islamophobic as fuck. I hope karma catches up. Yeah, there's no such thing.
This analysis of Netanyahu's statement from Jerusalem.
Evil always thrives, chatter. There's no karma catching up. It's funny to see cabinet ministers saying this occupied region is a security belt from Syria to the Golan Heights because the whole justification for occupying it. Yeah, exactly. The whole justification for occupying and annexing the Golan Heights is that Golan Heights is a security belt for northern Israel. We're doing security belt inception. No, it's the same tactic. It's always the same tactic. You go in, you say, we have real security concerns. We have people living there. We have real security concerns. We have to push the boundary. Then you annex that boundary that you pushed. Okay? Then you repopulate that area. You repopulate that area with more settlers. Then now you have security concerns. You have to expand further. Okay? In the words of that other guy who wrote the Times of Israel article before they took it down, Lebensraum. That was literally the fucking argument that the dude was making. Yeah. Amid the chaos, the Israeli Air Force carried out numerous strikes in Syria today, taking out weaponry Israel fears could fall in the hands of hostile forces. According to the reports in Syria, strikes earlier targeted ammunition and weapons depots at the Kalkala Air Base in Suwaida, several sites in the Daraa Governorate, and the Mezze Air Base in Damascus. This afternoon, additional strikes were reported at the Mezze Air Base, a major security complex in the Kafr Souza suburb of the capital, a branch of the Scientific Studies and Research Center in Damascus, and a central square in the capital that includes intelligence and customs headquarters. This is from Times of Israel military correspondent Manny Fabian. Following the fall of the Assad regime, the IDF has said that it is tracking advanced weapons in Syria and working to prevent them from reaching Hezbollah or any other hostile elements that could threaten Israel. Yeah. So yes, this is absolutely working in favor of Benjamin Netanyahu.
Well, look, you know, after the last 14 months, Israel has a lot on its plate, but it is definitely concerned about what's happening in Syria. And I think this, basically, they are saying that they are going to seize this buffer zone that has existed between the Golan Heights and occupied Golan Heights in Syria. They're going to seize those positions. And I think ordinarily that would have been seen as hugely provocative, but certainly from Israel's perspective at the moment, it is understandable. I mean,
someone look up a map of Greater Israel, and you will understand which direction people are heading in. Now, if you were to say this, for the record, if you were to say this like, I don't know, 10 fucking years ago, I think that there was more of a reason to be skeptical of that. If someone were to be like, oh, they want to do Greater Israel, they want to do Greater Israel, I'd be like, I don't know. Okay? I don't know about that. Nowadays, I feel like, I mean, look, Euphrates to the Nile. Look at that. This guy is not a random dipshit, okay? I mean, he is a dipshit, but he's not a random dipshit. That is the finance minister of Israel, Bezalel Smotrich, describing the aspirations of Greater Israel. Yes. The Nile River, in between the Nile River and the Euphrates. This is the map of Greater Israel. Sometimes you'll see this patch on soldiers' arms on the Israeli occupying force. It happens to feature most of Syria, half of Iraq, all of Jordan, all of Lebanon, parts of Turkey as well. This is what it looks like in terms of the patches. Parts of, obviously, Egypt too. Yeah. I believe it's also in the Likud charter too. Yeah, also Saudi Arabia to a certain, Saudi Arabia too. So, where does this originate from? I think it originates, I don't know. I mean, it's like the Bible, I think. I don't fucking know. Well, for evangelical Christians, they believe that the Greater Israel, like this land between the Euphrates and the Nile River, belongs to only Jews. And when it is only populated by Jews, they will, the Armageddon will happen. Jesus Christ will come back to Megiddo and fight Satan's forces in Megiddo. And all of the evangelical Christians will be sucked into the heavens. And everyone else that is not a good evangelical Christian will burn in eternal hell. This, of course, includes the Jews, that are in between that area. But the trigger event is for them to populate this entire area so that this anime supervillain style fight can happen. Yeah. I think they're mostly focusing on their political capital on northern Gaza as far as settlements go at the moment. Some groups do photo shoots in southern Lebanon and left, but northern Gaza and the Netzarim corridor are where our eyes should aim at right now as far as that goes. Yes. I mean, I think like the reasonable thing, well, it's still unreasonable, but what they will be allowed to do is most likely populate North Gaza. As I have said, as they've shown their interest in bringing in settlers and utilizing the occupied or the currently ethnically cleansed parts of North Gaza and repopulate it with settlers. So they're already doing that. Yeah, they're very anti-Semitic. They believe half the Jews will be converted and the other half will be destroyed on Judgment Day. Yeah, I mean, one of the main guys that believes that is Pastor John Hagee, who once famously said that the Holocaust was good because it was a trigger event for Israel, and that Hitler was actually Jewish as well. He was the Antichrist and Jewish. That's what he said, Pastor John Hagee. Now, regardless of those statements, Pastor John Hagee is not considered Anti-Semite of the Year by StopAntisemitism.com. I am. And not only am I the top 3 for most anti-Semitic person in America, John Hagee was actually welcomed at the pro-Israel rally. He spoke next to Van Jones and many other members of both the media and also Chuck Schumer and numerous other people like from American Congress. So remember when people are like, you know, remember that when people talk about, like when people cynically talk about anti-Semitism in an effort to deflect away from valid criticisms of Israel.
They are very concerned about who these rebels are. They're concerned about...
Oh, yeah. Jay-Z is accused of sexually assaulting a 13-year-old in a 2000 incident along Sean Diddy Combs in an amendment lawsuit. We'll take a look at that in a little bit.
Chemical weapons falling into the wrong hands, and they don't want the rebels operating right on their border. So, you know... Look,
this is bullshit. They didn't have rebels operating right in their border as a concern at all before. They literally welcomed it. Okay, so the notion that they now have an issue with the rebels operating on the border is bullshit. Here is senior editor of 972 magazine, okay, Ben Reif. With Assad gone, Israeli forces are currently seizing the buffer zone between Syria and the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights, which has been in place for half a century. The army has also been instructed to occupy control points, while ministers are calling to occupy Mount Hermon. Saudi media is reporting that the Syrian side of Mount Hermon, Jabal al-Shaikh, is now under Israeli control. And there it is. They got the flag out and everything.
Look, Israel is fighting wars in Gaza. The one in Lebanon has only just finished, but it does seem like it's willing to engage with Syria as well. We've just had a note from the IDF warning people in 5 villages in southern Syria to stay indoors for their own safety because Israel could be preparing to make strikes there. Israel has had a very ambiguous relationship with the Syrian regime up until now, and it's one that really indicates the complex web of networks and political allegiances in the region. So for a long time, after the Arab uprising in Syria back in 2011, 2012, Israel basically wanted the status quo. They're no great friend of Bashar al-Assad, but they calculated that a man who was allied with Hezbollah, a man who was allied with Iran, Israel's 2 arguably greatest enemies along with Hamas, they calculated that Bashar al-Assad was better than what might come next. Well, now we've got what's come next, and Israel is going to have to make the calculation of what kind of Syria it wants, and if they don't get the Syria they want, how will they respond?
Bombing Damascus, taking a photo with the Israeli flag on Syrian territory is a provocative way to greet the new regime on its first day. I assume the Israeli Decision makers have already calculated that they can't have peace with any regime in Syria and are sending a message. I mean, I think they're just flexing. How the fuck does a whole ass country fall in a single week? I mean, it was already held together with ticker tape, if that makes sense. It wasn't, there has always been, at least for the past decade, there's been like a very strong, resilient anti-government movement in the country. There's a shit ton of Western efforts, Western involvement that propped up some of these groups and armed them. There it is. You have a massive country that is a border nation to you, and I'm not even talking about Israel here, that has also consistently utilized its own militia forces inside of your borders. Erdoğan'ın bir zamanlar Büyük Ortadoğu Projesi'nin eş bakanı olduğunu söyledim mi? Baktığında başta söylediği her şeyi eninde sonunda yapmış oldu. Gelecekte Kıbrıs'tan bile bir parça verebilir. Böyle bir şeyin olabileceğini düşünüyor musun? I don't know. All right. Yeah, we're gonna see what the CNN crew said in Syria
Clarissa
after the Assad regime fell.
Spoke to us from inside the Syrian capital of Damascus. Here is some of what she told us.
It's a little bit eerie, certainly, and there's definitely a sense when you talk to people that they're delighted, but they're cautious, they're concerned. What comes next?
Yeah. Why are they cautious and concerned? My American chatters are telling me I should not be cautious nor concerned. It seems like even CNN, Clarissa Ward, is saying that, understandably, the Syrians are cautious and concerned.
Be chaos? Will there be lawlessness? Will we see more looting like we saw today? But if you have that other clip pulled up, I just would love our viewers to be able to see the scene at that border crossing as we pass through it. Again, it was already dark, already past curfew, very, very quiet.
An HTS militant in Damascus says we will declare an Islamic caliphate and pledge allegiance to the Muslim caliph in order to fight the Jews. Yeah, right, dude. Sure. There's got to be someone who's like pro-Assad that's claiming that. And I don't mean that they're not like anti-Semitic or whatever. I'm sure plenty are. But they will never, I don't think they'll fight Israel at all. You're out of your fucking mind if you think that they're going to fight Israel. Once again, Israel has strategically offered support to al-Nusra in the past. That's just not a real thing.
Quiet and just nothing like we've seen it before. The only real evidence we saw, Wolf, of any struggle to finally take Damascus, to finally oust Bashar al-Assad, was a tank in the road below a torn poster of President, or I should say former President, Bashar al-Assad. Take a look at that clip if you can. So we're just crossing now into Syria. It's astonishing to see. It's absolutely empty. The border points before, there would have been soldiers, there would have been border guards. Now there is absolutely nobody from the Syrian regime. Just a few friendly people waving us through. And honestly, the last time I came down this road was back in 2011. I was leaving Syria. I had been undercover in Damascus, posing as a tourist, went back into Lebanon, and I never went.
The chief of staff of the Israeli occupation forces, HasanAbi, announced that starting Sunday night, the IOF will begin combat operations in Syria. Aldan Markey says Jelani now has a chance to prove the national character of himself and his forces. No. And this would be tremendously beneficial for him. If he wants regional recognition, look at what the Ansar Allah administration got in terms of positive coverage from the entire region because of their blockade on the Red Sea and because of their military campaign against Israel. If there is no easier way, well, Kai was barking with my dad. There is no easier way to gain immediate legitimacy other than in the region, other than attacking Israel immediately. The reality of the matter is he will not do that. He just will not. There is no way. Even if it would be beneficial for them, it would ultimately be very harmful for them if their interest is to control Syria. America will never allow a hostile entity to control Syria. Aha. Bakın. Yürütür müsün? Peki. Peki ver. Ne bileyim gönder. Anyway.
Imagine this moment would come when we would be driving through this border with no one from the regime to stop us. And Wolf, my cameraman, Scott McWhinney, just found this on the ground, literally, as we were listening to that clip. This is the old flag of the Syrian regime, which has 2 green stars. The rebels' flag has...
I'm sorry I stopped playing Valorant. Zombie Queen. Said, ew, I'm still following this asshole. No thanks. Down 40K plus viewers. Thank God. I mean, it's pretty good. I'm sorry for no longer playing Valorant. I'll get back one day. You don't have to be this upset.
Has 3 green stars, but this one has now been literally, we just found it on the floor. I guess a real moment where you see how much things have changed just in the past 24 hours. In terms of the security situation on the streets, I would just add, we anticipated that we might see quite a lot of checkpoints as we came into the city. We didn't. We did see a group of men. They did not appear to be armed, but they asked us what we were doing, where we were going. And now that we are sort of ensconced in our place where we're staying for the night, we have seen a couple of patrols. I saw 2 men armed, and I went up to them and asked them where they were from. They told me they were from Idlib, which is in the northern part of the country. And we saw a man on the street go up and wanted to pose for a photograph of them, which I think sort of speaks to the moment. There is obviously jubilation, elation, but also this sense of you can't compute. It was so fast, so breathtaking. It's astonishing. And I think people are taking some time to try to process the magnitude. Keep in mind, Wolf, we're talking about 53 years of Assad rule, 53 years of a brutal police state. And I can't tell you how many Syrians have said to me, Wolf, that, you know, we understand that there are concerns about the rebels and the makeup of the rebels and the fact that some of them are Islamists and some of them are even jihadists or have been affiliated with al-Qaeda or prescribed organizations. But let us have this moment. Let us celebrate the fact that this brutal dictator who has ruthlessly killed hundreds of thousands of people, who has gassed children with lethal nerve agents, who has...
Syrian rebel commander urges Israel to support uprising, strike Iran-backed forces. In an interview with Tal, a fierce Syrian army officer expresses hope for friendly relations with Jewish state, warns of Iranian militias propping up Assad. They will come for Israel too. Yeah, anyone that thinks that these guys are going to fucking attack Israel, at least in the next 4 to 5 years, are crazy, in my opinion. I think, like, at most, this will be like a 9/11 style situation against America, more likely, and maybe even Israel, perhaps. Right? But I do not foresee this. I do not foresee this becoming a immediate, like, oh, we took control over Syria and now we're going to use that control to like attack Israel. Russia said that Assad didn't have the will to fight after all. Yeah. All right, let's continue.
Locked people in prisons and tortured and beaten them to death, that he is finally gone. And that whatever may come and whatever the anxiety, this is a new chapter for Syria, Wolf.
All right, Clarissa Ward now having made her way to Damascus, the Syrian capital. Clarissa, thank you very much. I want to bring in CNN's international diplomatic editor, Nick Robertson, right now. He's done a lot of reporting from Syria and the Middle East over the years. Nick, what do we know, first of all, about this transition of power in Syria right now?
Yeah, risk and opportunity is sort of the way that President Biden spoke about it in his speech there. He mentioned being vigilant, and he said that because we've heard, he said, what the rebel leadership who had its roots in al-Qaeda, we've heard what they're saying. It sounds like it's good. They're talking about a non-sectarian society with a new political dispensation. And this is something that President Biden said they need to live up to. We've heard the words, but we need to see more. And what President Biden laid out that he expects is in the future is a Syria that's sovereign and independent, which seems to be a very clear message, crystal clear. Russia and Iran will no longer have any kind of stake in the future of Syria. So that's part of the political picture going forward. It's made up of the different ethnic groups. It's made up of the different religious groups. It's made up of all the different elements of society inside of Syria. That's President Biden's aspiration. And that's very much what we've been hearing from the rebels. And I've been talking to actually a political grouping way outside of the rebel structure who were central to peace talks back with Assad's regime. And about a decade ago, the United States was playing a role in that. And there was a lot of work laid out back then for what a new government could look like, what a new constitution could look like, who could be involved in it. And this political leader told me that's the direction he believes that the country is headed in again, a period of military security, the military pull back. There's a power-sharing government for a period of time, 6 to 9 months, perhaps, he outlined, and then elections. And this really fits in with what President Biden was saying, that this new Syria will have a new constitution. Some of that's been drafted in the past, and a new government. The plans to get that new government and achieve it have been made there. But President Biden being very clear that ISIS will not be allowed to fill a vacuum. U.S. strikes on ISIS today. The security...
No. The other ISIS will not. If you're reformed ISIS, then you're fine.
Of U.S. forces vitally important, but also making sure that ISIS doesn't get stronger, and remembering that there are hundreds and thousands of ISIS families and supporters in jails inside of Syria today, in the rebel-held areas in the east, that the United States supports and helps keep them controlled. That will be vital to oversee going forward, and that is going to be of strategic importance to the United States. So that's the path that he's setting out. The rebels are setting out a path of change. No.
Haas, would you agree that the smart thing to do is, in fact, not to fight Israel? Do you think the unbelievably broken Syrian people can afford that? I'm curious on your take. Oh my God, dude. Brother, you have not stopped talking about, how fucking misunderstood Jelani and his group is. And now you're like, well, it's actually realpolitik. Brother, Yemen is the poorest country in the fucking area, okay? Yemen is the poorest country in the region. The Ansarallah administration was literally in the midst of a massive, damaging, deadly civil war backed by UAE cutouts and also the Saudi cutouts that were instituting a blockade using American weapons, killing the entire fucking population. Look at what they did with the limited amount of resources they have. Okay? We are not poor. Stop slandering us as token Yemeni. Dude, you have like one 1957 F-15 in your Air Force. What the fuck are you talking about? They have like a one F5. We are rich in culture and faith, bro. Yeah, no shit. But and I love Yemen. I think Yemen is dope. But you know, shut the fuck up when I say Yemen is poor. You can't be like, no, we're rich in culture. Like you're going up against a fucking like the oil barons in Saudi Arabia and actually putting up a decent fight. And that is something to be, you know, it's understandably something to flex on you if you want to. But it's like ridiculous to say, no, you don't understand. We're rich. Anyway, the difference between Yemen and Syria is huge, dude. Syria is an open field day for Israel. It's literally on the border. It's stupid to tell Syrians to fight Israel. All I'm simply saying is that the real reason why Syria will not participate in this is because they don't want the smoke. Whichever government of Syria that comes into play is not going to play a role in the supply chain against the axis of resistance against America and Israel in the region. That's it. That's the point and purpose of this operation. That's the point and purpose of this destabilization. Assad, playing both sides, playing all sides, at the end of the day, still allowed that to happen because it needed Hezbollah forces to quell the popular uprisings.
No longer brutality, political, religious plurality.
Nick, I want you and our viewers to listen to what the rebel leader who led this revolt against Bashar al-Assad's regime said just a short time ago. Listen to this.
This victory, my brothers, is a victory for the entire Islamic nation. This new triumph, my brothers, marks a new chapter in the history of the region, a history fraught with dangers. Leaving Syria as a playground for Iranian ambitions, spreading sectarianism, stirring corruption, it became the world's leading source of Captagon. But today, Syria is being purified by the grace of God Almighty and through the efforts of the Arogue Mujahideen.
So, Nick, does that speech give us some insight on what could happen next now that these rebel groups are in control?
Yes, it does. You would expect, and this is what we've heard here, in any speech, he's essentially going to thank his supporters, which is the Islamist fighters who've been part of this coalition of rebel groups. And that's what he said. This is, you know, and let's not forget the context of where he was. This is in this mosque, the Umayyad Mosque, is in the heart of Damascus. It's an ancient and frankly very beautiful building in old stone, and it is sort of, if you will, the one place you would expect him to go and give a speech for an Islamist leader in the most venerated mosque in Syria. In that context, he speaks to the people who got him to power and got him to Damascus. But he also speaks about no longer for Iran to have an interest. I think that very clearly sort of talks and speaks to the negative interference that he sees Iran has played in Syria, but also to its Shia faith. He's a Sunni.
It'll never not be funny to me that the media was so quick to be like, Hamas is ISIS. But then when you have literally ISIS guys, they're like, those guys are no longer ISIS. They're rebels. They're moderate rebels, former jihadi rebels. It's like, it's a super simple mechanism. It's like enemy, bad guy. Friend, good guy. It doesn't matter.
There's a difference. But when he speaks about Captagon, that's a message to leaders in the region. Captagon, the drug, has been an absolutely pernicious and deadly impact on the countries in the region, from Jordan to Saudi Arabia. They all want to see an end to that production. It's damaging their societies. The money of it's kept Assad in power. And when he says that, what Jelani is doing is speaking to the leaders in the region who will help continue to keep him in power. So he's talked to the people that have brought him to a place of power, and he's talking regionally to those who he hopes can help keep him in power, Wolf.
And this new group, this group, HTS, not necessarily a new group, but clearly a very powerful group right now, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, is in charge. They've taken over for Bashar al-Assad's regime. Nick Robertson reporting for us. Thank you very, very much.
Breaking news on Syria, and this time related to Israel. And Israeli airstrikes are being reported by Reuters saying...
This is a real brave Mujahideen moment. It's crazy.